and it's been less than...
All right, what's going on, everybody?
Hello, testing, testing. Hello, testing, testing. Okay, so I'm gonna be playing Left 4 Dead 2 again, right? And, man, there's some bad things going on with America. You see, they're trying to cover up something. And I feel like a conspiracy theorist, but there's people making videos about this. This is no conspiracy. Uh, let's just take a look. Let's look at this. This is from Optimus. Alright, let's see. Stream is going fine.
Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about and doing another update on this entire Epstein file situation. Now, just a few days ago, I published a video on the day where the Epstein files were legally supposed to be released, which was Friday. That was when the entire Epstein file, thousands and thousands and thousands of pages and documents and pictures, all these different things, were supposed to be released by the US Justice Department to the entire American public so that we could finally see what was going on. This was voted on by Congress about a month ago, and it passed through, and it was actually kind of surprising that everybody in Congress, unanimously pretty much, outside of like one or two votes, determined that this was something to release to the public. But as I talked about Friday, we had gotten reports that the Department of Justice was not going to release the entire file as they were legally required to, as everybody was under the understanding that was what they were going to do, and that they were only going to release some of the files, and that over the next few weeks we would be getting these like strategic rollouts that contain more of the files, which is not what was described in the legal order for all of this. And in that video I talked a lot about like what I kind of expected for the Epstein file release to actually entail, which, as I had said in that video, I expected it would be mostly redacted, there wouldn't really be any new bombshell evidence, and that it was basically all just political theater for the government to make it look like they actually care about what the American public wants. It's just a big move to make it look like they're actually listening to us and they're trying to be transparent. And it turns out that I, along with pretty much everybody else that was watching this situation, was actually correct on what was going to happen here. So, as you can see by the title of this video, the Epstein files are being buried in plain sight. There is now obviously more for us to talk about. The files have been released now for about a day and a half as of me recording this audio for the video, and we have a lot to talk about here, so let's go ahead and get into it. As you guys have probably heard over Twitter and whatnot, maybe even the mainstream media the last day or so, there have been some pretty big situations revolving around this entire release that I think are pretty noteworthy, one of which being that, according to Politico and other outlets, 90% of the Epstein files that were released on Friday were redacted, which, like I said, should not be a surprise to anybody. I mean, we all knew what was going to happen here. There was no way they were going to release all of this info that incriminated US presidents, that incriminated billionaire businessmen, famous people, celebrities, like all these different people across the entire socialite realm of America, right? There was no way they were going to just throw all this info out there and just let everybody see all of this in plain sight. Did I think it was going to be 90% of the files that were redacted? Not necessarily. I was thinking more 75-80%, but we all kind of knew that was what was going to happen. But I think that pales in comparison to the fact that as we speak, the Justice Department is actually going back through the files that were released to the public, and they are quietly, without notice, without even asking anybody anything, they are quietly removing files that were actually published on Friday so that you can no longer access them online. So all of these files were dumped out onto the Department of Justice Justice's website, a government website at that. And over that time period, since release to now, people have been combing through it all. You know, there's been some pretty interesting pictures that have come out of everything. You know, Bill Clinton in hot tubs, Donald Trump with girls and other people on the island. Some pretty interesting photos have come out in this entire thing. But of course, in every single one of these pictures, the faces of the victims, the girls or whatever, are redacted. And it turns out, including that, these, you know, girls are being blacked out and whatnot, so apparently they can't be, like, identified and possibly harassed. It's supposed to protect their identity. We also find out in the same time frame that the victims are not the only people being blacked out in these images. In fact, some of the other faces and some of the other people in these documents, according to the Justice Department, are people who are in politics and other important positions. And obviously, these are the people that everybody wanted to see. These are the people everybody wanted to know about, right? Because we know these are the people who were with Epstein on that island. We know that they were participating in, or at the bare minimum, knew about what was going on this island and with all these other people going there. And the government at this point is basically telling us, oh yeah, well, we're going to be blacking out government officials' faces and whatnot too, and other important people's faces that aren't particularly victims, because it's sensitive information. So in essence, what they're doing is they're going through all the files, they're taking out anything that could actually be of any importance, and they're completely dumbing down the release, which is, I think, what everybody expected to a certain degree. I didn't think they'd be so bold and open-faced about it, where they're just basically telling us to go fuck ourselves entirely. But like, as I've said in many of these previous update videos on this situation, there is no incentive on, and this is the thing, there is no incentive on the Democratic or the Republican side of the American political aisle. There is no incentive for either of them to come out here and tell the actual truth about what happened here. Because the truth about what happened here is that Republicans and Democrats were both going to that island. You know what I mean? There's pictures of Bill Clinton, there's pictures of Donald Trump, there's pictures of other people, right? And both sides of the political aisle know that they've had people on their own side that went to that island. So there is no incentive really for anybody to actually come out and say, oh yeah, this is what was going on, or to expose what was really going on. So as of right now, it's 16 files that have been deleted from the overall Epstein file release. This is according to the Associated Press here. At least 16 files disappeared from the Justice Department's public webpage for documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, including a photograph showing President Donald Trump, less than a day after they were posted with no explanation from the government and no notice to the public. The missing files, which were available Friday and no longer accessible by Saturday, included images of paintings depicting nude women and one showing a series of photographs along a credenza and in drawers. In that image, inside a drawer, among other photos, was a photograph of Trump alongside Epstein, Melania Trump, and Epstein's longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. The Justice Department didn't answer questions Saturday about why the files disappeared, but said in a post on X that, quote, photos and other materials will continue being reviewed and redacted consistent with the law in an abundance of caution as we review additional information. So obviously everyone can see that this statement is entirely bullshit and that there is no reason to believe it, because number one, the photos and the files that have been redacted from this public release on Friday are ones, like it said in the article, one of them is an image that depicts the current president of the United States, his wife. And so obviously they're going to go through and they're going to take out the important bits that actually shows you, like, oh yeah, these politicians, these presidents, these candidates, whatever. Sure, they were on the island, but you can't see the evidence. You can't see the photos. You can't see all of the chains that link everything together to tie this entire story together, right? You can't see that. And so in a way, it allows them, like I said in my last video, they get to kind of frame the narrative. They get to kind of release things on their own, you know, their own terms, on their own timeline, their own pace, whatever, right? And when they get to do that, they get to control what people actually think and what they actually see when it comes to this story. And then also you have to consider, right, because they say in there that they will continue to review and redact information and photos or whatever from this consistent with the law. First and foremost, nothing about this has been consistent with the law because, as I said in my last video, Friday's release of these Epstein files was supposed to include any and all files that were actually relevant to this case, which is not what happened. And obviously the people depicted in these files, like President Trump, Clinton, Bill Gates, whoever, right? They were not in compliance with the law to begin with, and and they've not been in compliance with the law this entire time as they've been covering it up and covering for each other and refusing to explain the truth or to come clean about what happened. They're all still breaking the law. And at this point, the Justice Department also just broke the law Friday in technicality, because as we know, none of these laws actually matter to these people to begin with. So nothing about this has been consistent. And also, let's point this out too. The Epstein files have existed for years. You know, it's not like this just magically came about
like
in the last couple of weeks. It's not like 10 days ago, you know, Pam Bondi and all these people in the government just got 500,000 pages of files dropped on their desk like, hey, take a look at this. This shit has existed for years. The government and the elites in this country have covered this up for years. Pretty much as long as Trump has been in office for his second term, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, all these people have had access to the entirety of the Epstein files. They have confirmed this many times. Kash Patel himself even said that he had seen what was in the Epstein files and that it was like grossly disturbing. Pam Bondi has seen and said that she has the Epstein files. So they've had access, at least this administration, to all of this info for months. And you're telling me that they're still needing time to redact and censor information, especially in the ones that were supposedly already reviewed and have now been published to the public? Absolutely not. And none of this makes any sense. Nothing that has anything to do with this statement or anything that the Justice Department has done at all so far, none of it makes any sense. And the reason it doesn't make any sense is because they're kind of just bullshitting this and making it up as it goes. In my opinion, I don't think that President Trump or, you know, Pam Bondi, any of these people, anyone in Congress, really anyone in the government, I don't think any of them actually thought that people were going to press them so hard about the Epstein files. I think they thought they kind of had just like some sensational moment where, like, you know, everyone was going to talk about it for a little bit. And then when they did like that influencer staged event where they like got a bunch of people from like Twitter and shit and had them hold up files and said, oh, we've got the Epstein files right here. I think they thought that was going to be the end of it. You know what I mean? I think they thought that people were just going to see that and be like, oh, well, this whole situation's over with now. The info's out there for everybody. I think they thought everyone was really that stupid. But obviously nobody fell for this shit because it was like laughably pathetic how bad that attempt was to just kind of cover everything up. I think they thought that even if a vote went through the Congress, that most of them would vote no. But when it became more than apparent that they would be committing the equivalent of political suicide as representatives in the eyes of their constituents if they tried to be like, oh no, don't bring out those Epstein files, I think it pushed them to continue the political theater. I think it pushed them to where they're like, okay, we have to shift this to a different gear now. And then now that's kind of where we're at with like this pseudo release where it's like, oh, we're gonna release the files, and then, oh wait, it's only some of the files and they're 90% redacted, and we're currently taking out the ones that we released that show the president and anyone else that we consider to be sensitive, and we're gonna go ahead and make sure that you don't actually see anything new, and a bunch of the files are already, you know, stuff that we released prior, and then the court documents that you actually want to see, 116 pages of that is just completely redacted, so you can't see anything. So it's clear, you know, they keep dragging their feet on this. The government keeps, you know, they keep playing the game where they're like, oh, we're finally gonna do something, and then, of course, nothing actually happens. But unlike a lot of other situations where they do this, you know, they can do that when it comes to starting another proxy war in the Middle East, or when it comes to, like, the Venezuela situation, where, like, every day we're wondering right now if America's about to go to war. It kind of works with shit like that. You can kind of, you know, play the 50-50 game a little bit with that shit, but when you're talking about the fact that the entire political and social elite of America have been openly committing child sex trafficking on Epstein's Island for probably decades, and there's very gruesome, disgusting, and stomach-revolting information in that entire thing, I think it comes across a little bit different to most people, especially, you know, Americans who have children, or people with, like, younger siblings, or realistically just anybody with their fucking head on halfway straight, right? So even when they do, like, the half-assed thing where they're like, okay, some of it's gonna come out, and then we're gonna keep doing the rolling releases where Of course, they're just gonna keep drip feeding shit that actually isn't consequential at all. When they even are like half-assing that, it's just like a very pathetic showing. Obviously, nobody is satisfied with the outcome of this so far. We haven't learned anything that we actually want to know. Most of the info that's coming out is just regurgitating shit we've already known. Most of the photographs that we're seeing are just basically confirming the friendships Epstein had with people that we already knew, you know. Obviously, Bill Clinton, President Trump, Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, all these other people where these photographs are coming out from. We already all kind of knew this is what was going on, okay? We already had this in mind. But anything that was consequential, like I said, the court documents about Epstein's case, which actually gets into like the nitty-gritty of what was going on in these situations, right? All of that stuff is redacted. So at this point, I don't think anyone is surprised, but I think everyone is disappointed. Even though, like, the expectations were already dirt low, and like 90% of what happened is shit that we've already all predicted before, they still somehow found a way to fuck that. You know, they still found a way to not even meet those dirt low expectations. I mean, the bar was basically underground, and they still couldn't even clear that. Once again, the government, all of these people in it, they are not your friends. You know what I mean? And you have to think about this too, right? There are thousands upon thousands of Americans who work in the Justice Department, who work in the FBI, who work in these federal law enforcement agencies. Not all of them probably have clearance to view these files, but you gotta think some of these people probably have clearance to be seeing these unredacted files, to be seeing the photos, to be seeing the court documents and everything else, right? Why are none of them doing the right thing, doing the patriotic thing, and just leaking this information? You have people who are working in the government right now who could just do the right thing, who could just do the thing everybody wants them to. They would be an American hero in all reality. They would be deemed one of the greatest living Americans if they just said fuck it and loaded the flash drive with as much of the shit as they could and just published it on the internet. Just did like an Edward Snowden move, right? Where they just whistle blew the whole situation. And unfortunately, I think if we want to actually know anything about this case, I think if we want to actually learn any new information, that's probably what it's going to take at this point. Because it's very apparent that the Trump administration, the federal government and system at large, both sides of Congress, all these different factions and all these different groups, all these different socialites in Hollywood and in business and in tech and in finance, you know, none of them want this shit to come out. None of them want to be thought of as like, oh, I was on that island, even if they were on that island, right? And so at this point, in order for us to get the real truth, the actual what happened situation, right? It's gonna take a whistleblower. It's gonna take somebody inside who has some sort of access to say, you know what, fuck this, fuck Cash Patel, fuck Pam Bondi, fuck all of these people. It's time to do the right thing. That's the only way I think we're actually gonna learn anything, because even the shit that is like nothing burgers in the grand scheme of this entire situation, even the out of context pictures and shit like that, that are legally required to be sent out to the public, even that is not following through, right? Even that is not actually getting the results that it was actually supposed to give people. And obviously, like I said in my video on Friday, right, you've had people in Congress and whatnot, oh, well, if the files aren't all released today, then we're gonna have to do something about it, and we're gonna impeach Pam Bondi, yada yada, right? Nothing is going to happen. Nothing has happened. If something was really gonna happen, they had the legal authority on like Saturday to just start going to houses, to go into the offices and just start arresting people who are liable for this, right? But of course they didn't, because it's their friends, it's the government. The government is not going to attack the government. They're not going to go after their own. It's all one big group. It's all one big party up there. And guess what? You and I are not fucking invited. You and I are not in on that one, right? So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me on Twitter and Twitch at Optimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, talking about the Epstein files cover-up continuing and signing out.
Got it.
Excuse me. Next, I want to watch Feudahor's video, or listen to Feudahor's video. Not Mutahor, Feudahor. Ha ha ha. Oh gosh, this is a numbers puzzle.
I hear a boomer.
Look.
I'm like, why?
Fire in the hole!
I'm sorry.
Healing. Cover me.
Hold still, I can heal you.
Pills here. Faster, move. Oh, no!
Oh, will you knock it off?
Ready for this? You ladies ready for this?
Reloading. Reloading.
Grabbing first aid.
Are you kidding me?
Damn it. Smoker right around here someplace.
What just happened? Alright.
No. No.
Alright, we're back where we were. Kind of.
Oh man, this.
Cover me.
Oh no.
Those bastards. Wait till I get a taste of this.
Ammo here.
You do not want to get charged off of here. Oh, nice. Oh, wait, no, that didn't work. Now that worked.
Secure that weapon. Here they come. Incoming! Look out! Grenade! Reloading! Smoker! Look! Ready?
You know, realistically, this would be very scary. Like, I'm a little on edge as it is because I'm just scared of falling off.
Molotov here.
Smoker! Great job, people.
My gosh, that almost looks like the Roblox respawn symbol. Yes, it wants to go down there. Uh-oh. What kind of tank is that? New tank in game.
Ready for the... Pills here.
This side of
Oh no. Holy crap.
Watch your... Damn it, watch your fire. Reloading. Over there.
Safe house ahead.
Reloading.
No, no, no. Whew. I need to urinate. Meow.
Watch my back.
cover me.
First aid kit. Someone's gonna need these.
I don't know what it is, but this map, I mean not map, this server, I feel I feel like I shouldn't talk.
Ammo here.
The signal? Holy crap. Oh no.
Ah, hell.
This server, like, has like special plugins, I bet, for this specific custom map. That's what I'm guessing. Excuse me.
Watch my back.
This is so
Ammo
cool.
here.
wish I could make something like this.
Watch your back. Hunt it.
I just watched Back to the Future too. It's very amusing, let's just say. Like, I don't care if people say it's a bad movie. Like, if a movie can be amusing enough, like... Actually, that's not true.
Molotov's here. Got it.
Those bastards are in for a big surprise. Smoker!
Oh, did I accidentally throw the grenade? Oh no. I just had a grenade launcher, I don't know where it went. Choco-Catties. Choco-Kitties.
Over there!
Weapons over here! Watch my back. Grenade!
Molotov over here!
Whoa, this'll blow something up.
Weapons here.
Maybe you ought to heal up.
Nice.
There we go.
Oh, will you knock it off? Careful. I smell a smoker.
How do you do that?
Damn it. Reloading.
Witch! It'll be nice when you keep that. Hell, it looks a lot worse than it is. Come on, you gotta get up and walk it off.
Oh shit.
Mother humper. Jeez.
I'm always tempted to shoot propane tanks or gas tanks.
Pills here.
Watch my back.
Snower.
Cover me.
Oh, that's crazy.
This ought to put the fear
Check this out.
out in them.
Guess I'll try the shotgun.
going on? This is a crazy place. I love it.
Jockey! We're doing pretty goddamn good. Don't let it go to your head.
First aid kit here.
Okay, well, there we go.
Over there. Be careful. Great job, people. Reloading!
No. Oh shit. I got a little scared, angry there.
And let me out!
I'm here. Watch my back. Cover me. Hold on. Let me patch you up.
Grabbing first aid.
Ass. Okay, well, I said thank you, but I don't know. It's kind of a penis head.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so do we have to grenade launch there?
Look over here!
Oh, we probably have to wait for him to get back.
Stop it!
Oh no, it's Zoe Chloe.
You know how important a garage or a shop is. It's
No.
where good things are built and broken things get fixed.
No.
I started running my home.
Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mutahar, and ladies and gentlemen, it's been less than
Thank you, Feudahar.
48 hours, and they're already covering up and removing the Epstein files, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Apple government has decided to release these magical files for the world to
Hunter Scott, look!
point out who they should in the world of leadership, right? The people that run our world. Yeah, this is insane stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, I looked at it about a day ago, and it was really, really great. But it turns out there's actually a lot of lost media all of a sudden.
Reloading!
Because the U.S. government is doing one of the biggest cover-ups that I've ever actually seen.
You people are
Now,
getting
one of the
good!
ways that I want to kind of
Oh, I can't hear him talk. Oh.
Congress and war powers and all that shit. I have to really go. I have to do a 5-minute read-up of the U.S. because they literally did not even understand their own fucking right? Ladies and gentlemen, I feel like the comprehension has gone so
gonna be
down through the
okay.
brain that I am actually okay, honestly, I feel like this is not fucking critical thinking. We live in a world where disinformation, like, it's bad, but, like, literally...
Alright, you know what? I think it's okay to leave the evil Zoe down there, you know?
Anyways,
Oh, she's
you know, this is
regenerating.
one,
See, she's
popular
dangerous.
account. Boom! President Trump's DOJ is delivering! Finally ripping open the Epstein files after years of deep state stonewalling. Only they are the deep state, okay? But anyways, the Epstein Transparency Act is in full effect. And today, the Justice Department is dropping hundreds of thousands of documents on that pedo monster Jeffrey Epstein and his sick network. They're launching it all on a searchable, downloadable portal right on justice.gov. No more hiding flight logs, victim statements, or connections to the elite swamp creatures. This is massive transparency. Trump promised it, and he's making it happen. So anyways, he points out that, you know, it's going to be bad for Clinton, Hollywood, billionaires, everyone. Now,
Why am I a
you
Lance
can really
Corporal?
tell cult behavior because, you know,
I mean, I'm not complaining.
focusing on a crime, a terrible crime like child sexual exploitation, they decided to make it a fucking political issue. Look, I don't give a shit if a loony leftist or a fucking retarded rightoid, okay, sits down and I don't care who is worse, okay? I just want all of them gone, okay? You know, a lot of people looked at, you know, images of Bill Clinton and they're like, tried to warn those Dems this would backfire. Homie, if Bill Clinton diddled a child, I want Bill Clinton to be under the jail, okay? It's as simple as that. I don't understand how people get into this left-right mentality. You should also stop corruption and stop in general. But going back to, you know, this boomer over here, who's talking about the radical left and transparency.
Oh, that's not good.
Massive transparency to you, pal? You like these black bars? This man must be a fan of Japanese porn or something, because there's just black bars everywhere. I know that I joke and I kind of giggle about this a little bit. I want you to understand that is a very heavy coping mechanism for the incredibly dark material we're covering. I don't want you to sit there and think for a second that this is okay, this is not fun. It's actually quite a serious crime. You know, looking at somebody like P. Diddy, you know, there's a lot of times you can laugh about this, like, oh, this guy's like 10,000 bottles of baby oil. But then you look at the victims, right?
Is an object coming down?
Immediately,
Yes.
should hit you.
Look at
A lot
that.
of people said this is way too dark for me. Is it?
This is like the funnest part of the map.
reality is, it's not dark enough. Remember, Jeffrey Epstein ran one of the largest
Oh no.
That was a good piece of work.
child trafficking networks for billionaires, world leaders,
I'm scared.
and allowed them to partake in highly illegal activities. Now, obviously, this is one actual
Where?
from the actual justice
Motherfucker. Oh.
This is a really sick. I actually overly censored this.
Well.
Piece of documentation. A little storybook.
Oh, that's so dumb.
Once upon a time, there was a coolest little girl.
That's one I owe you.
Like at some point, I just like I should stop caring about friendly fire risk.
Then, what is he doing? He
Appreciate that.
And here you got Epstein going, elastic.
Holy
It almost
crap.
feels illegal to something that has been.
All right, one at a time.
But again, this is just
Thank
one
you.
of the many documentations. One of the many things.
Might need these.
And obviously,
Boomer!
cover blow. What could this be? Young, innocent people.
Holy crap.
Decide how me and you get to live, alright? And I'm sorry, if those people are allowed to make decisions, then I think if those people are partaking in this kind of shit, they should be stripped of their privilege, their rights, their assets, and they should be put under the fucking thing, okay? 6 feet under. Man, what the hell? Quit shooting me! Anyways, I want to delve back from this. This is just one of the documentation. Now,
I gotta
one
play
of the
this map
issues
more
with
often.
this that I have, actually, is when you go to things
Weapon
like
over here.
File Transparency Act,
You know what? I'll keep
this
this.
bill was signed by Donald Trump and pulled his fucking teeth
This shit
so that
was
he would
not in my
vote on
plans.
releasing these files for the people to read.
I'm down.
And how big this is now,
That charger's not very bright.
who are in a fucking school for this shit. Alright, it's treated not less than 30 days after the fact. Basically, it will make publicly available in a searchable, downloadable format all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the possession of the Department of Justice, including the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office that relate to Jeffrey Epstein, investigations,
No.
matters, Ghislaine Maxwell, government officials, very important they mention this, entities, any immunity deals, communication, basically everything. Now inside here, because obviously we didn't want to give any of these agents or any of these like
No. Oh, that is not good. Oh, Boomer fell. Oh, that's funny.
Diddling a child, how are we gonna cause reputational harm? Reputational harm would be a thing. They wouldn't embarrass him just because, again,
Oh, dude, that jockey's smart. Dude, that jockey's trying to breed Zoe. Oh, shit.
redact segregable portions of records that A, contain personally identifiable information of victims and
Okay,
victims'
go.
personal and medical files. So
Oh, this is bad.
the people
This
who
is
are like,
bad.
why do they black out the victim name? Well, no shit they're gonna do that, okay? You're not gonna re-victimize somebody who's already been through fucking hell, you dummy. Of course, obviously, when you go through here, they would never depict or contain child, CSAM material, which obviously they weren't going to distribute because that's clearly illegal. So clearly A and B makes
Sorry,
sense.
I'm
C would jeopardize an active federal
I
investigation.
don't know what I'm doing.
Sense, but from what I understand,
Ah,
there
shit,
is
this
no
is
active federal
nerve-wracking.
Hold on, let me patch you up.
Thank you.
I owe you one.
Obviously, snuff tape to somebody that doesn't do anything. E contains information specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order and kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy, and are in fact properly classified pursuant to the order. So every redaction has to be accompanied by
Got him! Jesus, I'm down!
individuals who are trying to read this bill.
We're gonna be
Turns out that
okay.
wasn't actually the fucking case.
Wait, yeah, shoot.
Transcript. There is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI investigation, these documents in FBI possession were possessed, including Mr. Jeff, CEO of Marcus Bank, Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer,
Dude, I need to
worth
stop.
a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile
I need to go.
individual
Let
in the
go.
music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire.
Of course, billionaires. It's always billionaires.
Smoker! Nothing about him other than his work on this with his Democratic friend,
Wait up!
the guy who was
Hold up!
other
I gotta heal!
activist. I don't know anything about this guy, but I do agree that you need to be releasing.
Reloading!
This guy was there for any good person. All right, releasing this kind of information and exposing the evils in our world is a good thing to do, and he clearly has the power to do so, and he's been trying to exert it. Now, obviously, he listed off a lot of names over there. He listed off high-profile politicians. He listed off even billionaires from my own country of Canada. So, again, the net goes far and wide. And obviously, exposing these scumbags who control aspects of our society should be a thing. So, obviously, one eagle-eyed individual even started looking at some of the redactions that were being made by the government. So, in one of the actual documents, you can actually see that, again, Donald Trump's name keeps getting...
Oh no, I hear a charger.
First aid kit's over here.
It's not
What am I
good.
doing? What am I doing? What am I doing?
Could somebody give me a hand?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, quit squirming. I got you. Come on, up you go.
Thanks, man.
When people can very easily...
I'm down!
Gosh darn it. I did not expect that. I should have expected stuff from me falling from the ceiling again. Look at that. There's cars.
You're doing what we call the Streisand effect to your own
Look at
government.
that.
But again, going back to the bill, what's actually insane about this entire situation
Stop it already.
is that literally a victim came out and said that they were unfortunately
Come on, guys.
exposed again
Help me
in this
out.
entire process. So again, remember, when it came to redactions, the government failed to even protect victims. They were
I
too
can't
busy
hang on.
focused on
Please help
protecting
me.
their own people. They were too busy on protecting the interested assets for
okay,
themselves.
I think I can
So
get
one
you
victim comes out, and
Just
this is
hang
from
on
December
one more
20th.
second.
This Jane Doe writes, I write to place the DOJ on formal notice of a grave and indefensible violation arising from the December 19th release of records under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. In that release, my name or identifying information was disclosed publicly without proper redaction. At the same time, astonishingly, the DOJ and FBI continue to withhold my own FBI files.
Charger! God, he's crushing me.
I have an extensive FBI file arising from that report and related cooperation.
I feel like crap.
The FBI has confirmed in writing that my report
Someone, pull me up.
So, they couldn't even protect the victims from being victimized again.
Things are looking very bad. I'm talking about for the Epstein files, not the
Jockey, I'm not screwing around. I really need some help over here.
Have decided to be some of the top cops in the country. This is the kind of shit that if you actually care about your country, okay, this is again, if you care about America, you should be standing up to these scumbags. Because they're pieces of shit.
I'm in a little trouble.
Gosh darn it.
You know, and obviously, you know, when it comes to even like the 4chan, one of the interesting posts I wanted to show you guys was like, this is one post from like Poll, where they were like the Epstein files, and they were like, actually, things for you, low increase amount of that represent federal agencies.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's just redacted files. That's all it is. It's literally just redacted shit. So redacted to the point, ladies and gentlemen, that now it seems like entire files
I need
have
some
actually
help.
been removed. So you can actually verify this information for yourself. So I'm going to walk you through it right here. Because I think it's
The painting shoved me off.
They showcase what appears to be a bunch of downloaded files, and they were able to pull them up. Now, the downloaded file that they were able to pull up here was known as
Now I have to wait a little over 2 minutes to
0000468.
respawn.
Now, the way that we can verify this for ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, is if we go to these Epstein files, right, from the justice.gov/Epstein. If you go to the search functionality, which again, the search functionality is kind of broken, but it's fixing up, and now it's like better than it was yesterday. Remember, this is still a. It seems like it's still a work in progress live coding mess.
Oh, that's gonna attract the horde. Of course.
Just gotta make sure it's here, because again, I don't want this to. I don't want.
Watch out!
468. Now, EFTA 000 is at 50. 468. Search. You can see there's no results found. Now, if we do 467,
Ammo here.
and then we can see that there's actually something in data set 1. And if we do 469, you see that there's something in data set 1. So let's go back to 468. That's not there. Now you might be like, well, Muda, did it ever exist? Well, actually, it decided to go to
Somebody give me a hand over here.
So somebody downloaded the files, and they absolutely stuffed them into this separate.
Somebody,
Let's go. Take my hand. I'm gonna get you. Here we go.
Thanks.
Oh dear.
I smell a smoker.
The site didn't work. So somebody coded their own.
Why? Why? Oh! Why?
So if we look at EFTA
Gosh darn it.
467, right? If we just go to that actual DOJ website again, so let's just do 467. And we can just pull this PDF file open. Now, if we pull that PDF file open, you can see that this is the actual document. If we actually go back to the Versal app, 467, okay, same file. But now, if we can't pull up 468, for instance, right, that has been removed, in this case, from the data set. Well, let's look at the actual file browser. It does exist. 468 right here. So sometime after the release, they very shortly started pulling files out of the mix. Let's open up the file. Now, if we open up 468, you can see that inside the file, using AI, they detected Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. So let's look at this photo really
Here it
quick.
comes.
We've got Bill Clinton over here. We've got one here, Pope. I think it's like John Paul II.
Look,
And then, of course, you've got Donald Trump right over here, and that's Melania. This is a traditional photo we've seen already. But again, underneath here, you can see that there's more photos. There appears to be, again, just zooming in really quickly. It's hard to tell, but it almost seems like you've got Donald Trump over here.
Oh.
So again, I don't know.
Oh, they're all coming down.
I don't know why. What was so specific about this? When they picked them in the he had enough time to do so. But yeah, they decided to remove this. And it wasn't just this file, ladies and gentlemen. There was more files too.
Well, hell,
There was
look
apparently
at
up to
this.
16 files that were gone. Now, I really did try to look for any aspect of artificial intelligence, and if there is, I clearly can't see it. But the thing about it is, you know, it has these traditional watermarks. Again, I don't know. I don't know why it doesn't show up on the government, you know, register. I don't get it. But it clearly, you know, if this is the case, it's a cover-up. It literally is a cover-up. And, you know, you got people who are posting things like this where, man, look at that, Muda. There's a law that they're breaking, destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations. So they're bringing up U.S. code. Whoever knowingly...
Oh my goodness, that was...
yada, yada, yada,
I could have done that a
covers
little
up.
quicker,
Dude,
but that was like really...
what the law says, okay? The FBI isn't going to enforce it. You have to remember, a law only matters if there's people willing to enforce it. You know what I mean? Like, you could not pay your fucking taxes. I mean, that's against the law. And if there was no agency like the Internal Revenue Service, who the fuck is coming after you for your taxes? It's the same with anything. If there is a law and nobody is willing to enforce it, then what does the law...
No MP5.
You know, you've got a
you're a
government
good
these
kid.
days that doesn't care about what the courts will say or anything of that nature. And here's the thing, you know,
What
you
is a
probably
corporal?
post in the comments
I
section,
forgot.
You have like Trump derangement syndrome. And you know what? Honestly, like if that's the only thing you can do after what I just showed you, where files like this, then you're part of a cult. You can show a cult member literally things that are wrong. I mean, it's like talking to a
Oh wait, we gotta watch.
show them the world is
This is going to hell
not
real
flat.
fast.
But as long as that's where their brain is, it's just all just like that. Okay, they'll come along and just but in reality, you know, you got a bunch of people
Oh,
that have multiple pages inside.
those bitches. Zombie bastards.
Doesn't have multiple pages, only the one. 468 help me about as missing as Jeff the Killer on the internet. 469, you've got literally just the image. You've got one image with 3 images inside it. So again, it seems like information is just going into the wind. We're getting lost media. Not only they put up the files, not even all the files, by the way, but then all of a sudden the files that are there now are slowly, some of them are disappearing. Like, what the fuck are we doing here, man? Like, I'm sorry to say, at some point they're going to be talking about this in U.S. history classes, about probably arguably one of the worst cover-ups ever. You know, you've got an entire...
Definitely gonna be the
agency
worst
over here,
cover-up.
the Oversight Dems who are
Back to
like,
the fight,
yeah, that
Billy.
file, by the way, 468, why is that removed? Arguably, the only way for you to have any form of transparency is to probably
Billy.
pull an archive from literally a day ago. Some of these exist on, like, GitHub, like Harley Coops's Trump Epstein files. So if you want to actually see these files that aren't covered up completely, you can go into these files and you can verify them for yourselves, too. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, the
Oh, is that how it works? You have to shove it?
now
Shit, I ain't feeling
covering up
right.
the Epstein files. I mean, it's just simple like that. I don't even think it's I don't even think it's wrong to say that. Like, to be real with you, the government is literally covering up the Epstein files literally in less than 48 hours.
Zoe.
Honestly, I feel like for me making these kind of videos, it's almost like at the end of the day,
At the end of the day.
alright, if somebody can learn to critically
I'm reloading.
after all this, that's all it matters. Simple as that. So, you know, ultimately let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. If you like this stuff, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it, just like it,
Holy crap. This really makes me want to make a Minecraft custom map. But the thing is, like, each time I've tried making that third Scary Maze game thing recently, right? But I've like lost. I got overwhelmed by the project. Oh! So, of course.
Mother of mercy. Damn it!
Hold on, let me patch you up.
Watch my back, please.
Sure. Those bastards think they're sick now. Wait till they get a taste of this.
Weapons here.
Charger! Lewis. Witch!
Check this out.
Is there any Wow. This is fun. I need to favorite this map. I don't want adrenaline. Oh, it's getting dark.
Boomer! Reloading! You're gonna want to see this.
I'm reloading.
Ah, hell.
Help here.
God damn it!
Oh, this must be the finale. Or a different theme.
Watch out.
Oh! Holy crap.
Watch out.
Move it out!
Hunter.
Wow. Don't use bad words. You'll be banned. What kind of... Bro, this is Left 4 Dead 2. This is a... Why? This is stupid.
Reloading.
Oh, man. I chose the wrong closet item. Oh, this is not the end. It's the next donkey.
Look over here.
Great job, people.
I feel kind of...
Fire in the hole!
Damn it!
What
Reloading.
the hell? You're shooting!
Oh.
This is bad. This is really
Oh,
bad.
now this is the end. Oh, this is
Whoa!
What the?
You gonna make it?
Hey, man,
Up you go.
Oh my gosh.
Don't worry, I can help you. But we need to find you some first aid, man. If you go down. Ah! This is not going well. God damn it! I'm down!
I'm down!
Help!
don't worry. I got you. I got
I
you.
owe you one.
Oh, man. You took
I suck at this.
We gotta get you some first aid, because you go down like this again, and it's over. Oh, shit, I just hurt.
We gotta find me a medic.
I don't think...
Never goon.
Holy mother of God.
There's a safe house ahead.
Oh, man, something don't feel right.
Look.
Cover me.
What?
I need first aid.
Cover me while I heal.
Faster, move it, people.
Excuse me.
I'm gonna need
Finally.
cover me, gonna heal.
Why?
Everyone lock, damn it.
Nice.
I'm running low on Mountain Dew. I will run out by tonight.
Jesus H. Christ, I'm on your side.
What the?
Okay, people, we're almost there. Let's keep moving.
It's launched. They just launched.
Cocktails.
Ew, Zoe, stop singing. Sweet, delicious Zoe's. No, don't sing. Oh, we're getting separated. That's not good. know it's ironic, Gooseworks' favorite character, or like the character she likes the most, I guess, is Jax. Which is like kind of ironic. It's I don't know, it's a very strange thing. If you think of it's a strange fact if you think about it. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
Boomer!
Holy fuck.
Ammo here!
Human party.
Whoa!
Zoe.
Reloading! No!
Jesus H. Christ, Francis!
Don't do that, Pill. Final escape star. Finale escape star. Oh. Are you kidding me? No. Come on, come on. Oh, the pills did not help. The pills did not help. Oh, please, 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 please. For fuck's sake. Okay, I can still help myself. Let's not get rid of these zombies first. Oh shit. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is bad. I should have waited. Oh, thank God. Okay. Of course. Of course. What? Oh, is this where like they crawl out? the finale, son of a glitch, of course. Gosh damn it. Oh, at least it looks nice. It looks nice. That's all that matters. Gosh damn it. It's like you turn your back to your teammates for like 5 seconds and suddenly you're left behind. I shouldn't complain though, that was fun. I'm a sergeant now. Dude, I need to look up like the meanings, like the rankings. You know, there's like commander, general, sergeant. Like, I see that boomer bile back there. What's all this about? Savannah Nights.
Bill's here.
Let's get to the stage.
Sexy shit. Okay, stop. That's enough of that. It's a nice server and all, but man, no way. Oh wait, yes way. Yes way. Fox for dead. No, don't goon.
Heads up!
Oh, that was great.
Chino Zero. That sounds familiar. Isn't there like a popular workshop creator guy? It's like that. I've never heard Louis the Sourpuss say Francis like that. Oh crap, come on.
Help me out!
Goddammit, I'm hanging off a ledge over here.
Got it!
Man, this place is a wreck. That's a cool bridge. Someone's about to get someone's chicken jockey.
Get up now, come on!
Yeah, the special infected are especially a threat because of the whole headshot thing.
Oh, shit! Over there.
fridge. Still got a coffee maker in the apocalypse. Hurtful tank. How is it hurtful?
You're gonna want to see this. Hold up.
Super color tank. What? I think the Zoe got zapped. No.
Time to start some fires.
That tank has got the drop on us. I see something here. Oh yeah, look, the snowy plant textures. Oh wait, maybe the stream ended, I don't even know it. I haven't checked in a while, dang it.
Spinner.
We are gonna be okay!
Watch out!
Thanks a lot. Ah, thanks. I owe you a big one.
Got
Excuse me.
I'm down!
Thanks.
Jockey!
I am bad. I am bad! Yes, I am!
I'm bad, you know it. Apparently they brought Reason to Die back. I think it's called like Reason to Die Resurrected.
Shit, I need some help.
And I believe that's what it's called. I don't know if it's like a fan-made recreation or what.
You're gonna be okay. Easy.
Shit. It's absorbing. How do we defeat it?
Oh, I'm down.
Jesus, I'm down. Damn it! I need some help! Help! I'm in trouble!
She's getting mad.
Oh man, I'm in a sorry
Spinner!
Oh, come on. Oh, it's making me jump now. Oh, shit. Jumper tank almost dead anyway.
Thanks. I owe you one.
For fuck's sake, how do I keep... Lucky I got a headshot. But I'm still not so lucky now. Oh dear.
Help me!
Here, let me help you out. I gotcha. I'm gonna help you. We're gonna get you fixed
I
up.
wonder if there's a adventure map or a custom map based off of the thing for Left 4 Dead. Like surely. Oh, and it crashed. Great. Ew, nerd erotic. No. Here, let me fix this. Oh yeah, speaking of Star Wars, there's this guy I watched, or used to watch, called Sheev Talks. And, recently he made a stream, like, talking about Has Been Hotel Season 2 with other people, and it just grossed me out. I don't like Has Been Hotel, I don't like anything about it. So, yeah, let's see. What do I do? What the heck do I do? Well, obviously I still gotta, sauce. Wait a minute, no, let's play the Sheev Talks video. Cause, like, I still like him, I was just, ew.
Creatively or spiritually or intellectually, you are
Well said,
your
George
work,
Lucas.
which is, it's very hard to separate the artist from what he does, no matter who it is or what they're doing, because your creativity is so interconnected with your inner being that it reflects you as a person. So if you want to know a person, a filmmaker, or even any kind of artist really, but especially a filmmaker, you can sort of understand a lot about them just by looking at their work, and you can understand what kind of a person they are.
Okay, obviously I have an obsession with big, crazy...
And you can understand what kind of a person they are.
The freako fluff.
Okay, obviously I have an obsession with big, crazy explosions.
In many of my videos, you'll see me throw around the word contrivance a lot. Oftentimes I use it when I want to get across the idea that the plot has been damaged, whether severely or minorly, by poor writing. This isn't the only definition of the term, but for the purposes of what I do in my assessments, this word is meant to illustrate how a writer might have chosen to forego basic cause and effect in order to achieve desired outcome, a thematic payoff, or even just a really cool twist reveal. It could be any number of things. I have always and will continue to maintain the standard that a story necessarily needs a solid plot to function. The ultimate point will always be the thematic message within the narrative, but the only way to properly achieve those themes is to make sure the story is as strong as it can be, with as few holes or contrivances as possible. And many people have taken issue with the way I choose to break down media. They believe that certain aspects of storytelling simply don't matter as long as the intended themes are technically present, and regardless of how well those themes were actually presented. The Last Jedi has sort of become the air example of this in discussions since it released and broke online film discourse for the rest of time, because it's a film riddled with themes supported by an absolutely shattered plot and confused character work. We're not here to talk about that movie just yet, but suffice it to say that it isn't very good, and yet many people will defend it on the basis of what it was trying to say, whereas I elect to not simply heap praise on a film for wanting to be profound. Instead, I believe it should actually earn that by telling a coherent story, and you just can't do that if the plot doesn't make sense. And that's where we come back to things like plot holes and contrivances. Plot holes are strict contradictions within the story. If I tell you in one scene a character's favorite color is blue, and that his favorite color is blue is important to the progression of the story for whatever reason, it would then be a contradiction to come along later and say his favorite color is actually green. I placed a great deal of weight on the fact that it was blue in order to build payoffs within the plot, and those payoffs no longer work now that I've contradicted myself. This is obviously a made-up example, but to give you a real one to latch onto, in The Flash Season 5, the overarching villain is this fuck-ass named Cicada, who has this lightning bolt-shaped dagger that can drain any metahumans within a certain proximity of their powers. So the difficulty with apprehending him is not only that Barry can't get close enough to him without being rendered powerless, but when the dagger is active, it's effectively like kryptonite to them. In the second episode of Season 5, Barry and Iris's daughter from the future, Nora, tells them that in the timeline she comes from, Cicada never gets caught.
You never catch him.
Supergirl, the Legends, even the League tried, but no one was successful.
The theory at the time put forward by Ralph is that no one could match him in a fight because of the dagger, though there is still this funny line here.
Not all superheroes are metaheroes. Oh, what about Green Arrow? Yeah, he tried to once.
Like, really? You're telling me Green Arrow couldn't just, like, beat up this average guy? It's not like he's some super skilled fighter or anything. But in any case, other superheroes who are much more powerful than Oliver have also tried to apprehend Cicada over the years, including some version of the Justice League, and Supergirl is even mentioned specifically.
Supergirl.
And then, in a later episode, we find out that there are some pretty major exceptions to this whole no powers rule. His dagger doesn't do shit against Killer Frost because the source of her powers were retconned by the show so that they didn't come from the particle accelerator explosion like we were originally led to believe. And this causes the characters to conclude that the dagger specifically only works against metahumans and no one else. And I know that in many other DC continuities, metahuman is just a sort of catch-all term for anyone with superpowers, but the Arrowverse makes a clear distinction between metahumans and people like, say, Superman. The metahumans are the ones who got their powers via dark matter from the particle accelerator explosion or some other calamity. The show really ends up just having a lot of these. But yeah, those are metahumans, and those are the only people affected by Cicada's dagger, apparently. Which means that it no longer makes sense what Nora said earlier, because even if we were accepting the line about how Green Arrow wasn't able to match Cicada, I simply refuse to believe Superman, Supergirl, or any other member of the Justice League would have had any problem against them. They're leaps and bounds more powerful than Cicada, and the dagger apparently just doesn't work against them because they're not metahumans. And as a result of this contradiction of information, we the audience are now left to wonder, why didn't any of the other superheroes ever manage to catch him? The show has provided us with an obvious solution to the problem at hand, done nothing to sufficiently explain why that wouldn't work, and have therefore created a hole in the story. And the damage this causes severely weakens the overall stakes of the story. I no longer have any reason to feel that this super scary big bad is any real threat to our heroes, and every attempt this show will go on to make to assuage my concerns does no such thing. Like, for instance, in the same episode where the Killer Frost thing is revealed, we also have a moment where they actually do manage to catch Cicada off guard, steal his dagger, and are given the opportunity to dispose of it in any way that would render their enemy completely powerless. But instead, what Cisco does is create a breach and throw it into the exosphere right outside of Earth. Mind you, this is a character with the ability to open portals to alternate dimensions, so he could have thrown the dagger to the other side of the fucking multiverse, and Cicada would have had no way of ever retrieving it, but he doesn't do that, and so Cicada is able to recall the dagger and disable the Flash's powers. There's a lot more bullshit surrounding the logistics of all this that make it make even less sense, but this isn't a video about the Flash, and that's basically the gist of it. Go watch Madvocate Season 5 video if you want to get a more in-depth breakdown, but that's as far as I'm willing to go here. I can't believe that I just talked about the Flash again in the big 2-5. Plot holes necessarily damage the overall progression of the story, because they not only disobey cause and effect, they actively ignore and undermine it by the very nature of their existence. And without cause and effect, you can have little hope of maintaining stakes, which are what drive the emotional investment in the story being told. And contrivances aren't strictly as bad as plot holes, because they at least could technically happen, but they're not much better. Depending on the severity of a contrivance, I'd even go so far as to argue they're worse. They often showcase a writer's unwillingness or sheer inability to come up with a way to achieve whatever it is they're trying to achieve, and they're either too lazy or too incompetent to even bother. And when people simply decide arbitrarily that that sort of thing doesn't matter just as long as themes exist, you enable that sort of lazy ineptitude. What I advocate for is for writers to actually give a fuck about what they're making and create stories that have both strong plots and well-supported themes. There are plenty of films and shows that prove this is possible, and as long as that's the case, I simply will not ever accept the argument that plot doesn't matter. If both can be done, then both should be done. And with all that said, The Force Awakens is a story riddled with contrivances. Practically every page of the script breaks cause and effect in a dozen different ways, because as we went over in the last video, writer-director J.J. Abrams was only concerned with recreating the surface-level stuff from the original trilogy without understanding why any of it was there.
They totally killed Star Wars.
As long as I have the opening show, a rebel operative being attacked by stormtroopers, hiding the MacGuffin of the film in a droid and sending him off into the desert before being captured by the evil masked villain dressed in all black and carrying a red lightsaber, that should be enough, right? I've technically done a Star Wars. But there are several differences between these two film openings in terms of the actual minutia of it all. For one thing, there's everything to do with the very existence of this map and how all the characters know what they know and have what they have, like we went over last time. I didn't have to question the existence of the Death Star plans like I do with this map, because from everything we knew about the world going into A New Hope, it didn't contradict anything. It didn't contradict anything that the rebels would have been able to get their hands on them, and it didn't contradict anything that the Empire knew to chase them down, because as far as we were given to understand, all parties were coming from the same battle that just took place. Everything logically follows, and so we're able to continue on without any questions so the rest of the story can unfold. But as for The Force Awakens, there are several contrivances in this scene that are contradictory to the established motivations of several characters in order to facilitate the story that plays out at all. Kylo Ren is hell-bent on getting his hands on this map so he can find and kill Luke Skywalker, and this is said to be the one thing he wants to do above all else throughout this film. The film will also go on to establish several abilities Kylo possesses in order to speed along those goals, which he selectively chooses to use depending on where and when the plot requires him to do so. Like, for example, the very overpowered ability to read minds by simply probing them against their will with the Force. In this opening, he first confronts Lor Sen Tekka, a man he apparently has some type of relationship with and who knows he's been Solo, and the extent of their conversation is Kylo telling him he knows about the map and wants him to hand it over. Tekka responds by talking about his family, which rage baits Kylo, and he decides to fucking murder him. Never at any point in this interrogation does he, interrogate the man, and then he kills him, along with any valuable information he might have possessed. To which I can then see the argument that he was simply consumed by his anger at the mention of his family, and we've seen at various points in this film that he's prone to lashing out when he's upset. But not only does he seem to maintain a calm composure throughout the scene, even up to right before he decided to kill Tekka.
You were so right.
even if we were accepting that, Kylo is immediately presented with the opportunity to try again. Upon watching Kylo murder Tekka, Poe decides to try and kill him, but using yet another arguably overpowered ability, Kylo freezes both the blaster bolt and Poe in place, and Poe is taken prisoner. There's a very brief back and forth between Poe and Kylo.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Before Kylo orders him searched and taken aboard the shuttle to be ferried up to the Star Destroyer. Right before all this, during the battle, Poe realized he wasn't making it out of there because his ship was damaged, so he gave the map to BB-8 and sent him off into the desert to carry it as far away from the First Order as possible. But considering that was like 5 minutes ago, BB-8 surely couldn't have gotten very far, and indeed, we see pretty soon after this that he's still pretty near the camp when the First Order departs. Let's look at this from Kylo's perspective for a second. He knows that the map was here at the time that they came down to ambush the village, and that Poe couldn't have possibly taken it very far if he's still here in the village. That means either he, Tekka, or someone else in this camp hid it somewhere, and that somewhere would have to be close by. Either that, or whoever it was entrusted to would also have to be close by, meaning a simple sweep of the area would be enough to apprehend them, and had Kylo ordered one, BB-8 would have been caught. Why he didn't order one, I really couldn't tell you, but that's blunder number one. It's worth noting, by the way, that any one of these villagers could have also had information regarding the location of the map that Kylo just decides he doesn't need, I guess. Some of them are even seen to have been armed with blasters, which might imply they were loyal to Tekka in some way, and might well have been confided in by the old man, but Kylo decides to just round them all up and have his men execute them. Once again, this is a character who has the ability to extract information from a person's brain, let alone just torturing them through standard methods, but I guess he figured Poe was all he needed, which actually, come to think of it, isn't unlike a choice he makes later on in the movie for the exact same reason.
You've seen it. Forget the droid. We have what we need.
Yeah, why bother getting all of what I need when I can just get some of it and hope it's enough? I guess bros never heard the term better safe than sorry. So that's blunder number 2. Blunder number 3 is that he decided to once again not use his special mind reading power on Poe right then and there, which again would have told him what he needed to know immediately, and BB-8 would have been promptly apprehended. But then it gets even funnier, because after he takes him all the way up to the Star Destroyer, he then spends several hours having Poe tortured the normal way before going in to do the job himself.
No one has been able to get out of here. What you did with the map.
He wastes a whole bunch of time, all while BB-8 is getting further and further out of reach. And in fact, BB-8's movements give us a pretty good timeline of just how long Kylo waited to do this. When the First Order ambush takes place at the camp at nighttime, and by the time we catch up with Poe and Kylo, BB-8's already bumped into Rey at sundown, which would mean nearly an entire day has passed in the interim, all while Kylo just stood around, I guess. And this is something that happens a lot throughout the story. Whenever JJ needs Kylo or the First Order to not get involved in the plot, he simply writes it so that they aren't, regardless of whether or not they would be. Kylo waits a day to get around to extracting information from Poe's mind regarding the location of his greatest nemesis. He stands around and does nothing while Poe and Finn make off with a TIE fighter, and the First Order seemingly aren't that concerned with launching a ground pursuit of the escaped prisoners or the droid carrying the map, who they ought to know is a Nima outpost, since Unkar Plutt was specifically trying to apprehend BB-8 for the reward they were offering. Even accepting that Kylo isn't personally leading this pursuit, which I'm not, you'd still expect there to be more than 2 stormtroopers and 2 TIE fighters sent out to get him. And then, after the bullshit dogfight between the First Order pilots and Rey and Finn and the Falcon, they get away into outer space, and there is no First Order presence to blockade directs. It doesn't matter that there's apparently a Star Destroyer overhead that we see is still there later. The film literally just pretends it doesn't exist for this part, and is desperately hoping you won't notice or care that much. These things matter, even if some of them are small details. Because Kylo makes several out-of-character, stupid decisions in quick succession, along with a healthy dose of incompetence from the First Order at large, the plot is allowed to proceed unmolested. But in a good story, the writer would have worked to achieve all these payoffs without compromising the cause and effect. If I need Kylo out of the way for my story to progress naturally, I'm going to come up with reasons for why he can't get involved right now, because otherwise the audience will understand that this is a manufactured conflict where sometimes villains get blipped out of existence to allow our heroes to progress. And I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but that's a pretty surefire way to cause many people to be taken right out of the story. We like to make all these comparisons between Kylo and Vader, but the one that always stuck out the most to me was how hands-on Vader always was in the original trilogy. Personally leading ground assaults against the rebels, personally interrogating high-value prisoners, and since this is the direct comparison that's already being made, when it came to retrieving the Death Star plans, Vader was hell-bent on turning over every stone. Even when most people in the Empire didn't really care all that much because they were overconfident and believed the rebels couldn't really touch them, Vader was always quick to remind them just how wrong they were.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not given you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden portal.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Now, Vader was called back to the Death Star pretty soon after he took Leia prisoner, mainly because Tarkin wanted her aboard with them for further interrogation purposes, but also because Tarkin was absolutely no exception to the arrogant aristocrat thing we just talked about a second ago.
Analyze their attack, sir, and there is a danger. Should I have your ship standing by?
Evacuate? In our moment of triumph? I think you overestimate their chances.
But even when Vader couldn't be there personally to hunt down R2 and 3PO, he dispatched his top men to scour the desert and find the plans, and they acted with a pretty ruthless efficiency, I might say. Luke and the others barely made it off of Tatooine alive, and that's all because Vader was invested in the mission and acted accordingly. But the interesting part here is that, as we just went over, there was an actual reason Vader couldn't personally pursue the droids on the ground. The writer recognized that his presence would make it difficult to progress the plot the way he wanted it to progress, so he found a reason to get him out of the way, something which J.J. Abrams just didn't take any care at all to do. So instead, when BB-8 and co. get away with the most valuable treasure in the universe as far as Kylo's concerned, he just kind of stands there and broods. This might even be an interesting juxtaposition between the two villains in terms of how they choose to approach similar missions.
She'll die before she'll tell you anything. Leave that to me.
Well, I mean, I guess Luke is his name too,
I leave that to you.
But there doesn't seem to be any character-driven reason for why Kylo isn't as hands-on as Vader was, so it doesn't work. Contrivances like this happen all throughout the movie, as we're gonna get to, but taking us back to Kylo's blunders, you know what's another really valuable piece of information he could extract from Poe right now? The location of the Resistance base. We know the First Order don't know that information yet, because they explicitly find it out later as we went over in Part 1. So I don't know, that seems like a pretty useful thing to get out of him, but I guess Kylo just didn't think of that. Or more like, the writer didn't think of that. So I think it's time we do a little side tangent here and talk about bad world building and how it can damage the story even further. If a bad writer introduces something like a new power without properly considering how that might naturally affect the progression of the narrative he wants to have, you end up with problems like this one. And some people will say it's not a new power, that in fact we see it all over the first 6 movies, but that simply isn't the case. The main idea they're referring to is that certain Force users are able to sense other people's feelings and use that to gauge their intentions or otherwise exploit them by threatening the things they care about. In Return of the Jedi, Vader senses that Luke cares deeply for his friends and is thinking about them during their duel.
Your positive behavior, your feelings for them are strong.
He then specifically senses that Luke has a sister and further uses that to goad Luke into attacking him. But Vader isn't reading Luke's mind here.
Oh, I have a
defib. You think he might have used it elsewhere, like, say, to get the location of the rebel base out of Leia? Look at that. George actually recognized that that's something the villains would be interested in and chose not to introduce a power that would allow Vader to find out that information before the script required it. No, Vader is latching onto Luke's emotions, just as Obi-Wan warned him about earlier in the film.
Come on, hurry.
They do you credit, but they could be made to serve the Empire.
Your feelings have now betrayed her too.
Vader is sensing Luke's love for his friends and discerning the very specific feelings one could only have for a sister, someone closer than a friend, but not quite a romantic interest. What Kylo does in this film, which has been since carried into the new canon as an ability many Force users have, is not the same thing as what we're shown here with Vader, or anywhere else in the franchise. Force users can't read minds, and the only reason JJ added this power in was Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because the only time it really affects the plot is later on when he captures Rey, having realized she's seen the map and decided they don't need the droid to figure out where Luke is. That's the only time I can think of where him having this ability might be looked at as a solution to the question about how to progress the plot in the way the writers want. JJ wants BB-8 to make it off of Takodana. He wants the First Order to not get their hands on him. Otherwise, they'd have all they need to find Luke and the movie would be over. And I guess he felt like this was the only way to make that happen. I would heavily disagree, of course, and I think it would have been just as easy to write it so that the First Order were losing against the Resistance, and Kylo decided to make a tactical retreat with Rey in tow as his prisoner. Make it less that Kylo decided BB-8 wasn't needed, and more just that he felt he was out of reach, and that they'd simply have to make do with whatever Rey might know. But as for the interrogation with Poe, it actually would have made way more sense if they just excluded this ability from Kylo's roster. Then we could reasonably say that Kylo felt standard torture methods were necessary to get the information out of him, which would mean taking him up to the Star Destroyer and could potentially take several hours, allowing BB-8 to get as far as he did. This still doesn't fix the problem of Kylo not sending out men to sweep and search the area and find BB-8 immediately, but I'm taking this one step at a time here. And so, with that in mind, we can really only ask why JJ decided to include this. And the only answer I can think of is that he simply felt it would make Kylo more intimidating, and that's a bit sad, isn't it? I mean, say what you will about the guy and how he's characterized. I certainly have and will continue to do so. But the least you can say about Kylo Ren is that he's already got a pretty decent design. He's got the black robes and the mask, he's got the scary voice. There are ways of making him a terrifying figure to behold, just like with Vader, without having to introduce world-breaking concepts, and it really speaks to a lack of confidence if JJ felt otherwise. But also, I kind of thought him not being as intimidating as Vader was, you know, the point. Like, that he's trying to emulate him in all these different ways, but he just can't measure up because they're fundamentally different people who join the dark side for different reasons. I don't know, it just all seems a bit strange is all. In any case, we talked about this already in part 1, but since we're going over Kylo's blunders, I felt it was also worth reminding you guys that both he and Phasma registered that Finn was defective after his failure to comply with orders in the village, abstaining from the massacre because he felt it was wrong. Kylo clocked that something was off about him and retained his specific operating number later when he got told one of their men betrayed them, and that implies that he was at the very least thinking about Finn and his potential defection, but I guess not enough to, you know, do anything about that for some reason. This, of course, only gets funnier when you remember that this was Finn's first battle, which means Kylo took a stormtrooper that he knew wasn't battle-tested on one of the most important missions in history, watched as he clearly was not having a good time about it, and then observed him refuse to go through with direct orders to slaughter innocent people. And yet Finn was still allowed to wander freely around the ship and even get access to their most valuable prisoner in order to set him free. Because of this, they're able to walk right into the hangar without anyone questioning why the fuck the prisoner is being moved through this area and steal a TIE fighter. And here's the next thing that needs to happen so the story can progress. Finn and Poe need to escape out of the hangar, get shot down by the ship's turrets, and crash land on Jakku so Finn can make his way to Nima Outpost and bump into Rey. And you're not going to believe this, but there are several contrivances that facilitate this. The biggest is, of course, that they both survived this crash at all. I don't think the writers really appreciate just how great a fall this is. They fell from space with absolutely nothing to stop the speed of their descent, so they're not making it out of this one. I'm sorry. And for some reason, Poe was thrown from the crash and didn't wake up until way after Finn. More on that in a bit. So they get separated, and Finn believes Poe dead. Thankfully, Kylo wasn't smart enough to send anyone out to search the crash site and its surrounding area, so Finn is able to move through the desert unmolested. And he just so happens to have landed in relatively close proximity to civilization on this massive planet that appears to be mostly desert. I guess the best you can do there is assume Poe was aiming in that general direction when heading back toward the planet, since he knew BB-8 would be around there somewhere, but they lost control and started hurtling toward it. So I don't imagine Poe was able to do very much about where they landed, best pilot in the Resistance or no.
I can fly anything.
Yeah, that's great, buddy. In any case, Finn makes it into town, and we all know what happens from there. I talked pretty extensively about this portion of the film in the last video, so I'd like to shelve it for now and direct our attention over to Poe. As we're about to get into, there's an entire story that happens off-screen in order to get this character from point A to point B, and none of it makes any sense at all once you stop to think about it. Remember, the film starts off with Poe being sent to Jakku with the express purpose of retrieving the map, and that's what he's in the middle of doing when the First Order attacks the village, forcing him to hide it with BB-8. BB-8. We know BB-8 ended up bumping into Ray, who then happened to bump into Finn, and they all escaped the planet together on the Falcon. But Poe doesn't know any of that, and I can't think of any way he might have come by that information, which should mean his only mission upon waking up from the crash is to find BB-8 and complete the job, right? Well, the next time we see him is when he's leading a squad of X-Wings to fend off the First Order's attack on Maz's castle. And then he reunites with Finn back on the base, where he gives him and the audience this throwaway line.
What happened? I got thrown from the crash. I woke up at night, no you, no ship, nothing.
This is the extent of the explanation for how Poe survived and where he's been since last we saw him, and it raises so many questions. So let's run it back. Okay, he says he woke up at night, right? So that's like way after Finn does. Finn seems to have come to pretty much immediately after the crash, at which point he walked for a nebulous amount of time to Nima Outpost, met Ray, and left the planet. This all happens during what seems to be the middle of the day on this part of Jakku, and given the condensed timeline of events, what follows soon after with them meeting Han and dealing with the gangs and the Raftars all probably happened within that Jakku day. So by the time Poe wakes up from the crash, Finn has already left the planet, met Han Solo, been chased by pirates, dealt with Raftars, and is currently in transit to Takodana. But once they reach Maz's castle, they're quickly identified by a Resistance agent who just happens to be planted there, and it immediately notifies the Resistance of that. Pretty soon after, the Resistance squadron arrives to retrieve BB-8, and it's led by Poe. So, I don't know how long the film is saying they were in transit between the Raftar sequence and their arrival on Takodana, but it doesn't seem like this timeline is adding up. Presumably hours after they started their journey to Takodana, Poe would have to have woken up, gotten his bearings, trekked all the way to the nearest settlement, Nima Outpost I would guess, somehow managed to secure passage on a ship or steal one like Ray and Finn did, and get all the way back to the Resistance base in time for that droid to notify them that BB-8 was at Maz's castle, so he could then lead his squadron on this mission. And I guess he just abandoned his search for BB-8? How does he know the droid made it off-world? The only way I can see that happening is if he asked someone about it at the outpost when they told him about the Stormtrooper chase, but I'm not sure I believe Poe would ask around about BB-8, given how sensitive the information he's carrying is. But even if he did, all that means as far as he's concerned is that the droid flew away with 2 TIE fighters in hot pursuit. That doesn't tell him whether or not BB-8 actually made it off the planet, so you'd think he'd still be there searching. I guess it's technically possible that Leia sent a team to pick Poe up from Jakku, but even if that's the case, they wouldn't have left Jakku without BB-8 for the same reason. So the absolute best I can do for this film is put the events in this order. The Resistance spy on Takodana spotted BB-8 and alerted HQ. Leia got the message, I guess, relayed it to Poe and whoever else was helping on Jakku, if anyone. And they're the team we see flying in to save our heroes at Maz's castle, having come directly from Jakku. But again, that timeline doesn't track because Poe's movements would have been several hours behind Finn's, and as I said a second ago, that's an entire storyline that I've just had to conjure up to make sense of any of this, because none of that is in the film. I did also consider that pesky Star Destroyer looming overhead like we talked about a bit ago, but based on what the film shows us, it seems Kylo and Hux just decided to depart from Jakku after it was reported that the heroes got away, rather than, you know, pursue them. I mean, they must still have been near the planet by the time they got picked up by Han, otherwise it makes even less sense that Han and Chewie found them by picking up the Falcon's signature. This is kind of a side tangent on its own, but the film doesn't actually make it clear what Rey and Finn are doing at this point. They're kind of just sitting there, acting like hyperspace isn't a thing, which is what allows them to get intercepted by Han. But also, Han is explicitly unaware that the Falcon was on Jakku when he got told that by Rey.
Where'd you get this shit?
Neva Outpost.
Jakku? Junkyard?
Implying that they're nowhere near the planet by this point, and I'm not really sure how that's possible if they only just left and never even entered hyperspace. JJ's being intentionally vague with where everyone is at the moment, because he simultaneously needs Rey and Finn to not be moving through hyperspace right now, but also can't exactly have it that they're still near Jakku for obvious reasons. So once again, we're dealing with a situation where object permanence just isn't a thing. If it's inconvenient for a thing to exist where it would, based on logical cause and effect, it simply doesn't right now, and we all just have to live with that. But either way, Kylo managed to let these really easy targets slip right through his fingers, despite them carrying something of incredibly high value to him. Because again, he's no Vader. He certainly isn't the kind of person to pursue our heroes through an asteroid field. In any case, Poe is alive, and he's here now, and we can spend all day speculating on how the fuck this all happened, but I think that ignores the much more prudent question here, which is, why? Why did JJ choose to write this? Well, you see, both he and Oscar Isaac are quick to explain that the decision was made fairly late in the game as a result of the fact that Oscar had previously played multiple characters who died early on, and he just didn't want to do that again.
Originally, Poe was going to die early in the film, and that was
are you kidding me?
And one of his issues.
Oh, I love that pile of cars. That's awesome.
He made like 4 movies in which he died early.
Oh, I love exploding
cars. And he was sick of dying early on.
A week or so later, JJ wrote
Dude, that is awesome.
got to figure out Poe's in the rest of the movie. And so this idea that Poe comes back was something that was added later, which obviously to me was incredibly exciting and fantastic. I get to live.
Evidently, JJ really wanted Oscar to play this character and was willing to bend the narrative unnaturally in all these different ways to facilitate that, which I find really telling. But it actually gets more interesting than that, because this is what JJ had to say about the matter in the audio commentary.
Originally, when I thought of Poe, I thought he would seem to die here and come back later. But then when Mary and I wrote the script, we killed him. What? And when I showed the script to Oscar Isaac, who I really wanted to be in the movie, he said he really wanted to do it, but he died in like 4 other movies in the first act. And
I hate Friendly Fire. I hate it so much.
And it was Michelle Rejwan, co-producer of the movie, who said, you know, Poe used to live. You could have Poe live again.
Oh.
I was like, no, I checked it. It's you see it coming. I was like, no, but it's really happy. And the movie needs something happy about it. So I called Oscar and said,
So, okay, I obviously wasn't there during the making of this film, so I can't say definitively what happened here. But it seems like, on a timeline, JJ originally had it in mind that he wanted Poe to live, then decided later to kill him off, and that's how it was when he handed one of the final drafts of the script to Oscar Isaac. All of which having presumably happened before production even began, because Oscar is present at the first table read, and the implication here is that he only agreed to be in the movie after getting the call saying Poe would get to live. So before ever filming anything in this movie, we already had the version of the script that had Poe coming back later, and there's an interesting conclusion to draw from that. Because originally, I had it in my mind that they'd already shot a lot of the film before deciding to bring back Poe, meaning JJ was forced to sort of just shove him into the script haphazardly and hope nobody would notice how weird it was. But that's not even true. He could have just redrafted the script so that Poe's survival was natural and followed logically, and it wouldn't have even been that hard. Imagine if Poe had just woken up from the crash with Finn, and they went on the rest of the journey together. They could have stumbled into Nima Outpost, reunited with BB-8 and Rey, and all escaped on the Falcon together. This has a ton of added benefits that I feel are a bit obvious. It's an often cited criticism of the sequels as a whole that Rey, Finn, and Poe are the main trio, and yet they barely share any screen time collectively until the final film of the trilogy. Finn has some decent stuff with each of them in The Force Awakens, but Rey and Poe never interact even once, and they don't even properly meet each other until the end of The Last Jedi. Meanwhile, TLJ sends all 3 of them on separate, barely connected adventures with new characters, none of whom get carried over into Rise of Skywalker. So by the time we meet them in Episode 9, they might as well be strangers to one another as far as the audience is concerned. Sure, the film tells us that a year has passed since TLJ, and I'm sure they did all sorts of stuff together in that span of time, but we never got to see any of it, so the development just isn't there. Compare that to the original trilogy's main characters, and it's really no context. Luke is even separated from them for the main bulk of the second and third movie, and he and Han don't even meet Leia until pretty far into A New Hope, but the films still take the time to properly develop their dynamics and the scenes that they do share, so that even when they're apart from each other, their relationships are still impactful to their overall journeys. In Empire, Luke abandons his Jedi training because he senses Han and Leia are in danger, and in Jedi, he lashes out against Vader and nearly gives himself over to the dark side when Vader goads him with the prospect of Leia being pressed into the Emperor's service. Now, tell me honestly, can you really see Rey harboring similar feelings for Poe by the end of the trilogy? Can you see her lashing out at Kylo because he threatened to hurt Poe Dameron specifically? So not only do you have the added benefit of developing the dynamics of the trio from the start, but it also fixes a few additional problems akin to what we went over last time with Finn's characterization. In part 1, I mentioned how they do a lot to set up the relationship between him and Rey, doing a pretty good job in endearing us to these characters early on and making us believe that they care about one another, before then dropping that and doing the bare minimum to carry it over the finish line. And I think the same is true for his dynamic with Poe. They pretty instantly hit it off and have really good chemistry.
Why are you helping me? Because it's the right thing to do.
Right thing to do. Okay, sorry.
Stay calm. I am calm.
Signal.
The movie goes out of its way to really make you like this friendship, and even has Poe give Finn his name, helping him establish for himself a sense of identity and individualism. And I suppose in the original version of this story, that would have been sufficient, because Poe then dies immediately after that, so there's no real development left to do between them. At that point, Poe represents not only the guy who gave him a name and woke him up from his brainwashing, more on that in a minute, but also the platonic ideal of the Resistance hero he's pretending to be to impress Rey and will eventually need to arc into becoming, as is represented by him recovering Poe's jacket from the wreckage and claiming it for his own. He looks the part, but eventually he needs to be the real thing, and that would be something that he comes to understand after initially being driven by selfishness. He carries on Poe's legacy by continuing to fight the good fight. But Poe being brought back presents some hiccups here, because now that he's around again, that would be the point where the narrative compares and contrasts them with each other to show how far Finn has come, or to highlight how little he's progressed because he's still unwilling to join the fight. Really, I'm just asking for anything here, because once Poe gets injected back into the story, they do nothing with him and Finn. They reunite back on the base and have one single scene together, which I'll admit is a little cute, but in the same way that the reunion between Finn and Rey on Starkiller Base is nice. There's enough here to make you feel good, but no deeper substance to be drawn from it.
You completed my mission, Finn. That's my jacket.
What?
No. Keep it suits you.
And for the rest of the movie, these two do not have a single scene together. They break apart to go off on their respective journeys, only for Finn to enter a coma. So even during the big heroes reunion at the end of the film, Finn basically isn't even present. In fact, Poe really isn't present for that either, despite the fact that we technically see him here in this wide shot as Rey is flying away to go find Luke. But he apparently doesn't have any perspective on his friend, the guy who rescued him from the clutches of the First Order, having been seriously injured and might never wake up again. Because for the rest of the movie, after when he was supposed to be killed off, he's essentially an afterthought. Nothing he does is something that specifically had to be done by him. Effectively, he's just a placeholder character. Him showing up to rescue our heroes on Takodana is something that's not unique to Poe as a character. Yes, he's the best pilot in the Resistance, but that's not a trait, that's a tidbit. I'm not saying it's not important for any potential development you might choose to give him, any more than Jaime Lannister being a really good swordsman isn't an aspect of his character that speaks to his growth after he loses his hand. But his exceptional flying skills had very little bearing on the Battle of Takodana, or the final battle to destroy Starkiller Base. Poe is the one who lands the kill shot, but that could have just as easily been accomplished by any other character, and the only reason it was Poe was because JJ had already brought him back. What I'm getting at here is that the way JJ went about incorporating Poe back into this story was extremely lazy. He could have rewritten it in the same ways that I suggested by having Poe be with Rey and Finn for their entire journey. He wouldn't have had to even reshoot anything to facilitate that, and all it would have taken was one more redraft of the script, but he didn't want to do that. It's way easier to just sloppily retcon his death in a way that makes no sense and open the door to major contrivances, and then relegate him to a side character for the rest of the movie, despite how important he was at the start. And part of me can't help but wonder if it's because JJ recognized that if you're gonna rework it the way I suggested, you kinda can't ignore the fact that Poe killed Finn's friend. I already spent a lot of time going over the Finn Stormtrooper stuff in the last video. I don't really feel like repeating all that here, but there's kind of a huge elephant in the room when it comes to the relationship between Finn and Poe that sort of has to be addressed if Poe survives the Jakku crash, and it never is. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but the Stormtrooper whose death jolts Finn out of his conditioning was killed by a shot from Poe, and this is something even JJ recognized as significant when making the film.
One of them was the shot earlier, when Poe fires and hits the Stormtrooper that goes down and marks Finn. That was an idea that came in reshoots, to have Poe be responsible for the death that causes Finn's breakdown.
Poe is continually characterized as a sort of fun-loving, quippy flyboy who isn't exactly going to mourn for the Stormtroopers who he views as the opposition to peace and justice. Indeed, in those clips I played in the last video where Finn was uncharacteristically cheering on the Stormtroopers' deaths, Poe was the one firing the shots. We've already talked about how none of this makes any sense for Finn, but I take no issue with that for Poe, because he doesn't have the same perspective as Finn when it comes to the victimization of Stormtroopers. All he knows is that they're the bad guys, and he doesn't care if he has to mow down every last one of them to end this war. TLJ would go on to try to develop these characteristics and send him on an arc where he learns patience and maturity, and that's handled very poorly, but it's not an arc I take any intrinsic issue with. I've always said that the natural progression of his development should be him understanding the deeper nuances of the situation, and while it's absurd to ask him not to kill Stormtroopers who are actively threatening his life and freedom, he doesn't have to be so gung-ho about it. And so, of course, that's where Finn comes in, because on the opposite end of the spectrum, this is where you'd have to develop Poe's reasoning for what he does. Why does he choose to fight in this war? Does he have a personal stake in the matter? A strong sense of justice? Does he just enjoy the action? You'd have to build this dynamic and have them address the fact that Poe killed someone Finn deeply cared about, while also forcing Finn to reconcile with the fact he's already grown to care about Poe. He's already begun developing that bond. Finn represents a foil to Poe's trigger-happy ways, but Poe forces Finn to acknowledge the pragmatics of needing to fight the First Order, even at the expense of some stormtroopers. If you want to introduce the idea that these are real people and that they're victims, the film ought to have something to say about that. But as we went over last time, JJ doesn't want to say anything. And he might have realized it would have been a lot harder to incorporate Poe into the story more naturally without having to do that. Because what about when Finn lies to Rey about being a Resistance hero? You'd think if Poe was there to witness that, he'd have quite a lot to say about it one way or another, and it would change some things about how this lie plays out narratively. And I could see them going about this in a couple different ways. Either Poe is caught off guard by the lie and initially wants to speak up against it before deciding better of it because they want Rey to trust both of them, and as far as he's concerned, Finn's not really a stormtrooper, right? This would be a cult perspective that later gets challenged when he eventually has that discussion with Finn. Or you could even have it be that Poe was the one who came up with the lie because he has enough emotional maturity already to recognize that this is obviously something Finn would be ashamed of, and maybe would protect him from having to deal with that. But just as we went over last time about how Rey should have had more of a reaction to the eventual revelation of the truth, the same is the case for Poe in that everything surrounding this lie should generate the inevitable conflict between him and Finn and their perspectives on the war and the people being forced to fight. But again, JJ isn't interested in doing that, so what we got is what we get. It's less interesting and it makes no sense, but it sure is easier to write. Then again, there is an alternative explanation here, and it's one I won't discount out of hand, because despite how cynical I've been about JJ's laziness, there's also every chance that this is just a matter of incompetence. He didn't think of any of the stuff we just went over because he didn't see how any of this was a problem. What's honestly just as likely, but no less saddening, is that he chose to write it this way because, as he puts it, it's happy.
No. It's, you see it coming, but it's really happy, and the movie needs something happy.
Please.
I called Oscar and said,
JJ has been known to make decisions based on what he feels will generate a desired emotional response from the audience, as he even admits to when talking about the choice to delay Leia's debut after the Battle of Takodana and deleting any scenes where she appeared beforehand.
So this is obviously the lowest point in the story for our hero so far. So in this moment of despair, the story needed
how many
uplift,
points do I have? Okay, 290.
Perfect place to reintroduce some difference.
Now, the deleted scenes in question don't really do that much to provide the much-needed development of the New Republic and Leia's relationship with it, so their removal really isn't that much of a loss. All it does is make it so that we have no idea who this girl is and see her on Hosnian about to blow up, but honestly, I can't say, having watched this 30-second scene of her talking to Leia, I have any clearer understanding of her character. With that all being said, I'm of the firm belief that this is information that needed to be established, and better scenes should have been written to take their place. Scenes that JJ would have unfortunately deleted, however, because we really needed to wait for her to show up after the characters just suffered a big loss, because that'll make the audience feel better, right? So in that same vein, I'm willing to believe JJ when he says Poe's return was written in this way simply because he wanted to provide the audience with some levity, and that just plain sucks, man. There are many people who like to argue that the emotional response we have to art is all that's really necessary when it comes to how your story is presented, and it's an extension of that earlier point about how the logical progression of the plot is all that matters. If you ever criticize a poorly written scene that made even one person laugh or cry or whatever else was the intention, then you're just a big meaty head doing CinemaSin style criticism. Of course, I already went over my stance on all that, and I won't go into it again, but suffice it to say, I don't think this is a good argument. You can generate an emotional response to the scene without sacrificing the integrity of the plot, so let's stop with this false dichotomy. All this mindset does is enable people like JJ to be lazy in their work, and the art suffers as a result. And I know it's going to be a case-by-case thing, but this is the kind of thing that causes a lot of people to scratch their heads and go, wait, what? Instead of being able to feel that emotional reaction the writer wanted, the one you're telling them they were supposed to have. There are other ways to generate what JJ wants to do here, is all I'm saying. We haven't even discussed too much of the movie's plot yet, and already I believe I've showcased that it's built upon a mountain of contrivances. This example with Poe is just one of many where JJ will flippantly erode the logical progression of his story if he feels it gets in the way of whatever payoff he's going for. And it's the same with the stuff I went over with Kylo. He needs Kylo to act in ways that are antithetical to his goals, because if he doesn't, then the story doesn't progress the way JJ wants it to. And he's either not talented enough or simply not willing to work around these issues to get what he wants. Like that. Circling back to where we were in the story, though, Finn makes it into town, and there's a really weird sequence of events that happen here that I just want to point out real quick. So, it's as Finn is trying to drink from a massive trough of water that Rey gets attacked by Unkar Plutt's thugs, which catches his attention and sends him running to her aid. He then stops because he realizes she doesn't need his help and is handling these guys just fine, which, yeah, wokeness or whatever, what a girl boss. And then he spots BB-8, and it seems like he realizes who that is. Earlier, when Poe was telling him he wanted to go back for his droid, he specifically described BB-8 as a one-of-a-kind orange and white BB unit.
That's right, he's a BB unit, orange and white, one of a kind. I don't care what color he is!
So it seems like Finn has pieced together that this is the droid Poe was talking about, right? But then, BB-8 notices him, spots the jacket that he's wearing, which, as you'll recall, previously belonged to Poe, and the droid surmises this man he spotted must have stolen it from Poe, because I guess the jacket is also one of a kind. So he tells Rey this, and she chases Finn down, smacking him with a stick and interrogating him as to where he acquired the jacket. The really weird part is that Finn suddenly doesn't realize what she or the droid are talking about.
The jacket! This droid says you stole it. Where'd you get it? It belongs to his master.
Belonged to Poe Dameron. That was his name, right?
It genuinely takes Finn a second before it dawns on him. And like, Finn? Are you okay, buddy? Did you hit your head on the way down earlier? You already recognized the droid. That's why you were standing there staring at him for BB-8 to notice you. Why did it take you so long to piece together something you already knew? You guys are gonna call this hyper nitpicking, but it's just a weird way of presenting this scene. Like, okay, I feel like the decision making here was you wanted to have this chase happen because it's funny, but that could have just as easily been accomplished without making Finn look like a dumbass. Have BB-8 spot him, have Rey chase him, and have Finn try to explain himself, only for him to kind of stumble over himself because there's a mad lady chasing him with a stick, and he knows not to fuck with her because she just beat the shit out of two guys. This is ultimately not that big a deal in the grand scheme of the story, but it was something I felt like pointing out. Anyway, this is when they get spotted by the only two stormtroopers the First Order bothered to send out, and I've already talked about this whole sequence in the previous video. Should have been killed by the TIE Fighter blast, good character work otherwise. Oh my god, it's the Falcon. In part 1, I talked very briefly about the fact that Rey is an extremely skilled pilot as one of the many reasons to support the conclusion that she's overpowered and overly capable, but I didn't really linger on that point too much for the sake of time and pacing. I would, however, like to circle back to that now and discuss the absolute fucking nonsense that this dogfight is before we move on to the next section, though. So just to make sure we're on the same page here, the claim being made is that the piloting skills Rey displays are incongruent with what we're told her experience is based on this brief line.
No one trains ships, but I've never left the planet.
In the last video, I questioned exactly what she meant by that, considering what we're given to understand about her upbringing and her relationship to other characters living on Jakku, namely Unkar Plutt, since he's the only one we're actually shown to interact with her in any way aside from his minions. He was apparently some sort of father figure to her, given that he took her in as a child after her parents abandoned her, but given the nature of their relationship is mainly a transactional one, and he clearly has no qualms about sending thugs to attack her when she denies him something he wants, I don't exactly think he's winning any Father of the Year awards. My conclusion was that theirs is clearly not a loving or personal relationship, so it's a bit strange that he would have ever let her fly any of the ships he owned, but even accepting that he did, having flown ships before but never having left the planet isn't nearly enough to justify the feats she pulls during this sequence. The Millennium Falcon is an asymmetrical bulk freighter that requires two people to pilot it properly, something which Rey even points out at several points in this film.
Are the shields up? Not so easy without a co-pilot. And you could use a co-pilot?
I got one. It's back there.
I'd have a hard time accepting that even Han could fly it through narrow chasms within a collapsed Star Destroyer with TIE fighters on his tail shooting at him without at least having Chewbacca next to him, let alone a girl with barely any real experience. The film makes certain attempts to lampshade her inexperience in ways that I actually find rather cute, especially because of how many people use these moments to act as though the criticisms I've just laid out are unfounded, because they actually only make the issue even worse. Moments like Rey crashing the Falcon into the ground when she tries to lift off and then destroying the outpost sign, or her digging a few pieces of debris here and there, are the movie's attempts to get across the idea that she's a novice pilot, and the fans will point to them as evidence to swat down the naysayers, but I'm afraid they have it backwards here. If Rey is so unskilled at flying that she can't even manage a task as simple as levitating off the fucking ground properly, then it's even even more unbelievable that she can swing this way and that through tight corridors while evading fire from trained pilots. Those who claim Rey isn't a Mary Sue will often cite moments like this and others where she fails as evidence to their case, because there's this weird misguided notion that to be a Mary Sue, you must succeed at everything, which is a bit odd because, again, if we look back at the Star Trek fan fiction from which this term gets its name, Mary and her compatriots do face adversity and aren't always successful. They get captured by green androids, and while it's not a big deal ultimately, as Mary Sue was able to get them out of that jam relatively easily, there was still a failure on her part. She, failed to not be captured by enemy forces. It just so happens that that failure never meaningfully impacted either the plot or her character, which sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? Let it not be said that Rey never fails across these movies. It's just that the ways in which she fails are never consequential or impactful to her journey. She fails to avoid capture from Kylo Ren, and it proves to be a relatively minor inconvenience. She fails to turn him over to the light side in The Last Jedi, but her reasons for wanting to accomplish that at all are poorly fleshed out nonsense for reasons we'll get into when we eventually cover that movie. So the impact this has on her character is non-existent, and she fails to initiate liftoff when first taking the Falcon into the air, only to then immediately fly it with the expertise of a seasoned pilot who also has ridiculously strong plot armor. And this is where people will come in and make comparisons to Luke and Anakin. It all just gets so fucking tiresome after a while. I actually already compared Anakin destroying the Trade Federation battleship to Luke blowing up the Death Star in my Phantom Menace video, because go figure, I have consistent standards, and attempts at whataboutism won't work on me. If it's bad elsewhere, then that doesn't mean it's not bad here, and as it so happens, I think Anakin pulling off such a feat at only 9 years old is stupid, regardless of if he's the Chosen One, which I already don't rate very highly as a concept. All that being said, though, I'm still inclined to give this one to Anakin. Yeah, the Chosen One thing is dumb, but as I said in my last video, when discussing these movies, we're taking all 6 of the Lucasfilms as canon and accepting whatever lore they establish. So Anakin being one of the most powerful characters in existence can't be dismissed out of hand, whatever I might feel about it. But Anakin being as powerful as he is in the Force does not absolve him from having to train or master his skills. He loses many lightsaber fights to more competent and or experienced warriors, even after he spent a decade or more training as a Jedi. So any attempts to compare these two characters from that angle has just never worked. Dooku is a far less powerful character than Anakin in terms of raw strength, and yet he makes quick work of him on Geonosis. The same cannot be said for Kylo in his match against Rey, despite all the reasons we went over in part 1 about how he should have had virtually every advantage. And similarly, just because Anakin has the Force and it helps him out when it comes to piloting,
He can see things before they happen. That's why he appears to have such quick
poisonous gas.
It's a Jedi trait.
that does not mean he's without failures of his own.
Smashed up on my pod in the last race.
It wasn't my fault.
Why did I say sorry
really?
for that now?
Saboba flashed me with his vents. I actually saved the pod. Mostly. I'm sure you'll do it this time.
Do what?
Finish the race, of course.
You've never won a race? Not even finished?
Kitster's right. I will this time.
Anakin has apparently been racing pods at a young age for many years by the time we meet him in episode 1, and it hasn't been without its hardships. And while I still maintain that him blowing up the battleship at the end is bullshit, I also stand by what I said in my Phantom Menace video about how Anakin actually has a leg up on both of these characters when it comes to actual experience. No, pod racing and space warfare are not one-to-one by any means, but the general idea of a fast-moving, highly stressful environment where people are actively trying to kill you and could do so at any second applies to both situations. So that's an aspect that Anakin is more than used to by the Battle of Naboo. We're given no reason to believe Rey's nebulous times flying ships were anything even remotely as stressful as what she's having to deal with in this TIE fighter chase. And as for Luke, I always find this comparison a bit annoying because, like, don't kill me for saying this, but what he did on the Death Star wasn't that hard, okay? I don't mean that as in it was some sort of walk in the park, obviously. You know, he and the other rebels being attacked on all fronts by TIE fighters, laser turrets, even Darth Vader himself, and a lot of them died in the process. But I just mean in terms of actual flying prowess, all Luke had to do here was fly in a straight line, basically. That's kinda it. Again, not an easy task, considering there were still people shooting at him, but he had the sort of morbid advantage that Vader and his goons were mainly focused on the other pilots for most of the battle, and when Luke actually was the specific target, he was saved right in the nick of time by Han, so there wasn't that much skill involved. This isn't me trying to downplay any of Luke's feats in the OT in order to take pot shots at Rey. I'm just saying that the writer understood the limitations in his skill set and gave him a challenge befitting that skill set. What he was asked to do was really hard, but it was never something out of his range of capability. The thing Luke did that actually was special and shown to be something only he was capable of doing was actually landing the proton torpedoes in the exhaust shaft. It was something one of the other pilots attempted to do and failed at because he didn't have the force guiding his hand. Luke did, and he shut off his targeting computer to surrender himself completely to the force in that moment, which is what won them the day. So, to get a head count, all Luke actually had to do here was fly down a somewhat narrow canyon and then fire a shot into a hole, something he specifically has practice in, as we're told earlier in the film.
That's impossible, even for a computer.
It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womp rats in my T-16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters. It's just like Beggar's Canyon back home.
Beggar's Canyon is actually probably even harder to navigate through than the Death Star Trench, considering it's a natural formation and would therefore have all sorts of twists and turns and jagged walls, whereas on the Death Star, it's literally just a straight line. We know that he owns and has flown a T-16 starfighter several times, and if you don't know what that is, it's this thing right here. Luke plays with a toy model of one in A New Hope, but you can also see the real one in the background of the same shot.
Stand you become quite a good pilot yourself.
I almost buy our own ship for that. But who's gonna fly it, kid? You? You bet I could. I'm not such a bad pilot myself. Look at this thing.
The best you can really argue is that this is pretty thin by way of setup, and I think I'd probably even agree with you there. But the setup is present, and it more than establishes his capability to do the task that was required of him in the Battle of Yavin. Plus, it's better than a single throwaway line that you might not even hear because Finn is talking over it.
No one trains, but I've never left the planet.
So to make a long story short, as with every comparison I see people make between these characters to try and defend one or criticize the other, context is key, and the context just doesn't favor Rey here. And the thing is, this could be far less egregious if JJ wasn't so concerned with this big bombastic set piece. Rey could have flown a ship that was more plausible for a single pilot and in an area with a lot less complicated maneuverability, and I might have even believed this. She has Finn as a gunner, who's obviously a pretty skilled marksman thanks to his stormtrooper training, so I can absolutely believe him picking up the TIE fighters chasing them while Rey flails around desperately just trying to keep them alive, but that just wouldn't have been as exciting, would it, JJ? A recurring theme with JJ Abrams that's present throughout both of his Star Wars movies is his insistence on the idea that bigger equals better. Luke and Han manned the guns while fending off a couple TIEs pursuing them as they escape the Death Star, but that's just them floating around in open space. What if for this sequence we have Rey flying through a massive set piece like something straight out of a fucking amusement park? What if we did another Death Star, but this time it's even bigger than the first one? Ooh, maybe we'll even call attention to that to really drive home how much scarier this one is.
This was the Death Star. And this is Starkiller Base.
So it's big.
Oh, and what if that Death Star is capable of blowing up 5 planets at a time instead of 1? Isn't that so much cooler? And the end result of this is 1,000 Star Destroyers pulled out of the ether to serve as the Undead Emperor's personal war fleet, each equipped with laser cannons that can blow up entire planets, so essentially just 1,000 Death Stars, because isn't that cool? But that's a discussion for another day from a different film. So to reel us back to The Force Awakens, Starkiller Base is a concept that just doesn't work on any level. It completely fucks with the world building, it doesn't make any logistical sense, and it was created for the sole purpose of one-upping something that was sort of meant to be the ultimate endpoint in and of itself. The Death Star was supposed to be Imperial tyranny at the apex of its absurdly vast power, and its destruction was therefore meant to be representative of the first major blow that would eventually lead to their downfall. So, similarly to how the First Order exists solely to retread the same ground already covered significantly better in stories past, Starkiller Base is here to thematically represent the same thing its predecessor did in a film that came out almost 40 years earlier. And JJ thinks he's upping the ante when what he's really doing is just the same thing, but more vacuous. Like, at least with the destruction of Alderaan, there was an emotional connection involving characters that are actually in the film. Leia stands there and watches as her home and family are destroyed right in front of her, and Obi-Wan feels that calamity through the Force, feels the millions of terrified voices crying out before being snuffed out, and that pain washes over him. It affects him deeply. Plus, we're told Leia's father is a personal friend of his from the old days, so that death also matters to old Ben. The Force Awakens, however, has given us no reason to care about the New Republic or any of the people on these planets. Obviously, it's sad in the abstract that potentially trillions of people just died, but they aren't real people. This is a fictional setting, and the inhabitants of these worlds literally just came into existence 5 seconds ago. So it doesn't have the same impact as something like this happening in real life. To pull from another Star Wars example, the reason the Gorman Massacre was so harrowing in Andor Season 2 was because the show went out of its way to establish that world and its culture. We met several characters and grew to care about their plight, the continued oppression of their people, and we watched our main characters interact with them, be inspired by them, and ultimately want to help them when they knew their cause was doomed. Plus, unlike with both the Hosnian system and Alderaan, the show forced us to sit in it. We didn't get to watch a planet blow up from the safety of outer space. We were there in the plaza with the Gormans. We watched them run, scream, hide, and we saw bodies being thrown savagely, ragdolled by Imperial dogs with no regard for their pleas. And we had to sit there and stew while the Gorman rebels sent out cries for help, pleading for anyone who would listen to make sure their deaths meant something, that it wouldn't be swept under the rug and transformed into some piece of Imperial propaganda. It's dread-inducing, and it's enough to make anyone want to go out and punch a Nazi in the face. But who exactly am I supposed to mourn for here? What's this chick's name again? Corsella? Oh, man, yeah, she was in those other scenes that got deleted, I guess. Real sad to see her go. And it's not like we can even latch on to the abstract fear of a galaxy being plunged into instability without a standing government, because that implies that there was stability to begin with, that the Republic had some sort of control over the rest of the galaxy, and that peace and prosperity were at hand. But that just doesn't seem to have been the case. From everything this movie goes out of its way to hammer home, the Republic was filled with politicians and bureaucrats who, at best, are ineffectual morons with no regard for the obvious threat rising in the outer reaches, and at worst were corrupt, complacent, and actively allowed the First Order to do all the things that they managed to get away with under the Republic's nose, like, say, stealing hundreds of thousands of children from various Republic worlds and training them up to be a slave army. Now, before we talk about how this stupid fucking thing works logistically, I need to make one thing clear, otherwise I'm gonna get a million comments strawmanning the point that I'd just rather do without, thank you very much. Obviously, Starkiller Base isn't realistic, but that isn't what's being criticized here. You see, the common non-argument people like to use to defend bad world building is, you're just getting mad that it's not realistic, it's just a movie, and that has literally never been my position. I have always advocated for internal consistency, which means you're allowed to tell me whatever you want and I'll accept whatever you give me, but establish something that contradicts that in any way or that fundamentally destroys the world building of your universe, and we have a problem. Like, I'm not gonna get mad about a guy with spider powers swinging around the city and catching heavy objects with his hands. He's Spider-Man. He does whatever a spider can. But if you then have Spider-Man get thrown into the fucking sun and inexplicably survive that, then sorry, the defense of it's just a movie is no longer acceptable. That wouldn't be bad because it's unrealistic, but because it doesn't make any fucking sense based on what the character's been established to be able to survive previously. And with all that in mind, when it comes to Star Wars, these movies have always had scientific inaccuracies, and that's not really disputable. From little things like sound in space or lack of concepts like time dilation, to big stuff like faster than light speed. What does that even mean? There is no such thing as faster than light speed. But we make concessions for that sort of thing, and as long as the story remains consistent, that's all fine and good. And that's why it gets annoying when later movies treat hyperspace as instant teleportation, when that's never what it was. Because in previous films, the fact that it took time to get from point A to point B had an impact on the progression of the story. If Luke, Ben, Han, and the gang just jumped from Tatooine to Alderaan instantly, then they would have been blown up along with the rest of the planet. Fire in space was a big topic of conversation conversation last year when The Acolyte came out and had a scene where there was just a normal-looking fire sitting on a ship's hull in the vacuum of space, and the defense was, fire has always been in space, see? Which actually is not unrealistic, like people like to claim. That's scientifically accurate, and almost every instance of fire in space depicted in this film series is actually pretty spot on in terms of how it would behave in the vacuum. I'm a big dum-dum who doesn't really know how to explain it, but suffice it to say, fire erupting in a pressurized explosion like this is how that would work. What's not realistic and what's inconsistent with those depictions is essentially just a campfire sitting on the outside of a spacecraft as though oxygen is moving through it, because believe it or not, there is no oxygen in space. And no, the defense that it was also depicted that way in one shot of The Phantom Menace is not a valid defense, because again, that's a whataboutism. That is also an example of an inconsistency with the way things are shown from the Dallas world, and is therefore a flaw. Go figure, it's not a good movie. All that is to say, accuracy to the real world is generally encouraged, depending on what you're going for, but it's not necessary as long as internal consistency is maintained. And in the case of Starkiller Base, not only does it break internal consistency, it does so in a way that massively strains incredulity and fucks with everything. It takes the defense of it's just a movie and tries to use that as a shield against any and all criticism.
Force Awakens is not inside.
Starkiller Base is a planet with a massive chasm drilled into it so that the First Order could somehow build a giant base inside of it and some sort of laser cannon that shoots massive bursts of energy into space, which are then able to traverse halfway across the galaxy in an instant in order to blow up an entire system of planets with a single shot. And the way in which this weapon gains its power is by sucking the energy of the sun into the core and...
Oh no. Uses the power of the sun. The weapon is charged at the sun's journey until it disappears.
Let's take this one step at a time. The energy beams being able to travel from Starkiller Base, which is apparently in the unknown regions, to the Hosnian system in the core, means that these beams are able to move halfway across a galaxy virtually the size of the Milky Way in under a minute, given the way this sequence plays out. And I know I just said Star Wars has always had faster-than-light travel, but even that had rules, like I went over earlier. The basic idea was that there's no feasible way to make for convenient space travel in any kind of timely manner, because, you know, space is big. So sci-fi writers who choose to set their stories there tend to have to find workaround solutions to this problem. You could go the alien route and use things like cryopods, where characters can spend potential decades in a stasis chamber so that, from their perspectives, the travel was virtually instantaneous, but objectively, for Ripley at the beginning of the second film, 57 years had passed since the xenomorph attack on the Nostromo, and a lot of changes had been made to the world while she was asleep, including but not limited to the death of her only daughter. However, to a lot of writers, that's not very convenient to the types of stories they want to tell, so typically they'll introduce some kind of wormhole-adjacent in-universe mechanic, you know, warp speed, jump points, or, in the case of Star Wars, hyperspace. That way you can have a society that spans across an entire galaxy without it taking literal decades or centuries for characters to get from one point to the other. Now, Luke can rescue the princess without having to wait until he's Obi-Wan's age. The way it seems to work is that even while moving through real space, ships are still able to move around or even slightly faster than the speed of light at their top speed, as indicated by this line from Han.
You'll make 0.5 past light speed.
But even then, when the Millennium Falcon's hyperdrive was damaged throughout The Empire Strikes Back, they had to limp all the way from Hoth to the Bespin system, a venture that took them several weeks, if not a couple of months, giving Luke time to undergo some rudimentary Jedi training on Dagobah. I do wish the film had done a better job clarifying that much time had passed, but it's also understandable that they obviously didn't want to devote time unnecessarily to showing them slowly making their way to Cloud City when that part of the story really just wasn't necessary. In any case, I'm willing to accept that these beams are able to move faster than light given the precedent set by previous films, but not so much faster that they're able to span half the galaxy in under a minute. And it doesn't even seem like that's what we're meant to believe is happening anyway, since, you know, the light emitted from these beams is also moving at the same speed the beams are moving, despite apparently being several billion times slower. And also, they're somehow visible in the sky on Takodana, which is its own separate issue. Really, it seems to exist just to make the characters aware that this is happening, but I'm not really sure what the point was of that, since it's not information that was immediately relevant to them in the story, and it's something they surely would have found out pretty soon anyway. The fucking Republic just got blown up. I'm sure that's gonna be all over the news. But either way, if the beams are somehow moving at the same speed as the light following them, the only way that could work is if they were somehow moving through hyperspace, and that... God, I don't even want to think about that. I know shit like the Purgle are a part of the Star Wars canon now, but it kind of defeats the purpose of blending sci-fi and fantasy to make it so that you apparently don't even need spaceships to enter hyperspace, and that it's actually just somehow part of the biological components of some giant fucking space whales. And in any case, I'm not sure how Starkiller Base has the capacity to allow the beings to do that. Then again, I don't know how it has the capacity to do this either, but alright, fine, let's talk about it.
Some people have said, you know, that's not how space works. You wouldn't see that light in a different star system. And to those people I say, you are absolutely right. Force Awakens is not a science lesson.
Yeah, okay, buddy. Here's a fun little fact for the day. Planets orbit around these big old boys we call stars.
Yes.
Yeah, like in the name. And those guys are really important, because without them, we'd all die. There's about 100 different reasons for that, but like I said earlier, I'm a big dum-dum, so I'll just name a few that stick out to me. Without the sun, we'd all fucking freeze because space is really cold, and we here on Earth exist in a pretty unique zone that allows us to sustain life without being too hot or too cold. Our politicians, billionaires, and world leaders seem to be doing everything in their power to correct the former, but that's not relevant to our discussion here today. Suffice it to say, though, without the sun, we'd all be dead within about 8 minutes, and the only way that wouldn't occur would be if the sun fully regenerated within that span of time, as it seems to apparently be able to do somehow. I mean, it's either that or the planet also moves through hyperspace in order to position itself next to a different sun, but how would that even work? Like, let's game this out. In order for any of that to make sense, the planet would have to have some kind of shielding that protects the inhabitants of the surface from being instantly fucking destroyed when moving through hyperspace. And we are shown that they do have shields, but we're also explicitly told that they're inconstant. And in fact, you're apparently able to slit through them by entering the planet at light speed.
Their shields have a fractional refresh rate, keeps anything traveling slower than light speed from getting through.
That's how Han, Chewie, and Finn get into the base, as fucking ridiculous as that is all on its own. So with that in mind, those shields wouldn't protect the base while traveling through hyperspace, nor does it make sense that the planet could even enter it without its mass heavily disrupting the dimensional plane and causing them to get pulled out by a gravity well, something Han warned Luke about in A New Hope.
Precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star. Obviously close to a supernova and then injured circle real quick.
Plus, a pretty major piece of this plot rests on the idea that Starkiller Base is stationary, because the Resistance only know where to find it based on intel given to them by Finn, seeing as he was stationed there before being recruited into Kylo's entourage. If the base was forced to move around every time they drained a sun, his intel would be outdated by the time he gives it to Leia, her scouts never would have found the base, and subsequently the First Order never would have tracked those scouts back to Dakar. So without Finn being able to provide accurate information to the Resistance, the mission to rescue Rey never goes ahead, the attack to blow up the station can't happen, and there is no ticking time bomb threat of the First Order being able to blow up the Resistance. Essentially, the entire final act of this film rests on Starkiller Base staying in the same place, meaning we basically have to accept the theory that the sun they're draining energy from is the same sun, and it can just regenerate somehow. And it can do so within an 8-minute span, because if not, everyone on this base is dead. However, regardless of any of that, everyone on this base should be fucking dead, because I know I just said a minute ago that without the sun, everyone on the planet would freeze to death, but actually, what's a lot more likely in this case is that they all fucking burn, because they just absorbed an entire fucking sun into the planet's core somehow, and are somehow able to contain it there. The amount of technologically advanced material they would have to have in order to contain all that heat and the sun's mass is fucking insane. And at that point, why even bother draining the sun? Surely you guys are capable of just devoting those resources into creating another fucking Death Star or something. And I can't stress enough that the First Order amassed all these resources, apparently, without the Republic knowing or doing anything to stop them. See, this is all a lot easier to believe in the OT, because when it came to both Death Stars, they were created by the Empire, the reigning power in the galaxy. They weren't some underground resistance movement working in the shadows to overthrow the government, as this film would have you believe about the First Order. They didn't have to scrounge around for resources. They had thousands of systems at their disposal with plentiful resources they could carefully procure while maintaining a precarious relationship with the Senate. The creation of the first Death Star was already an impressive feat in its own right, and it was something of a gamble for Palpatine even despite how much power the Empire had. But it was one that would pay off, he believed, since once it was complete, he would no longer need the Imperial Senate to maintain control. He could simply rock up to a planet and hold it hostage if they didn't acquiesce, and the fear of that alone was wagered to keep most systems in line. I really appreciate how all of this was expanded upon in Andor, but even putting that to one side, it was pretty clear within the confines of A New Hope that it took quite a long time for the Empire to finish construction of the superweapon, and that it was no small feat to do so. It would have taken billions of man-hours to accomplish, much of it still would have to have been done in secret, and the wealth and material required to do all of this would have put a massive strain on the Imperial treasury, which is why it's such a major blow against them when the rebels managed to blow it up. But I'd like to really impress all of that upon you, because that was the Death Star, something shown to be remarkably less impressive than Starkiller Base, as JJ is quite proud of himself for. And now you want me to believe that the First Order were able to do all that, but about 100 times more resource demanding, all in secret and in just 30 years?
The Force Awakens is not a...
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
It really is funny just how much all of these issues I've raised don't apply to the Death Star. It's a space station, not a planet, so it could reasonably have been equipped with the necessary technology to move around through hyperspace without that straining incredulity, which means we also get rid of the issue of the laser beam traveling impossibly fast. Instead, the Death Star is able to pop out right in front of whatever target it wants and blast it to hell. And I have my issues with the second Death Star, both narratively and because of the reasons we just outlined about how difficult it was to put the first one together, but that's a lot more believable than Starkiller Base will ever be. And while we're on the subject of resources, I'd like to shift focus now and talk about the New Republic and its relationship to the Resistance. There are some points I made offhand in part 1 that I'd like to expand upon here, chief among them being, where the fuck is the New Republic military? If you're trying to tell me that the Republic either didn't know or care about the rising First Order, and that's why Leia had to splinter off and form her own resistance movement that only secretly received support from some of the more sympathetic members of the Senate, then I don't really believe you, but we've already gone over that. So, accepting that premise as is, that doesn't actually change the fact that the Republic should have an official military presence, right? Well, if they do, it's never shown in any of the films, and as I pointed out last time, there's a throwaway line from C-3PO that implies there was one, but it went the way of the dodo after the destruction of the Hosnian system. So whatever forces the Republic might have had before they were destroyed couldn't really have been more than some local planetary militias and not a centralized military. And my question is, why? If you guys will recall back to Attack of the Clones for a moment, the subject of the Republic creating an army in the wake of the growing separatist threat was a pretty hot-button issue. It was actually the backbone of the story's entire plot, and it made a few things clear right off the bat. First of all, there clearly was some kind of military back in the days of the Old Republic that mounted a full-scale war, presumably against the Sith, as is referenced by this line. Assumedly then, whatever force that was got disbanded after the dust was settled and the Galactic Republic as we know it was founded.
I will not let this republic that has stood for 1,000 years be split in two.
We know this because obviously there wasn't one by the time of the prequels, and that's why the clone army had to be created at all. And obviously there was a lot of fuckery from Palpatine behind the scenes making this all happen, but from the perspectives of most of the senators at the time and in retrospect, the chain of events here was basically an enemy movement is rising, they're building an army, we're powerless against them, and war is inevitable. Oh look, there's an army, come to save us. Basically, the clone army and the Jedi leading them became crucial to defending the Republic from being overthrown, and the Senate basically had no choice but to keep allowing them to exist and funding the creation of more of them for as long as the war continued, which obviously ended up proving to be a mistake considering what ended up happening. Palpatine assumed full control of the military, wiped out the Jedi, and established a new regime with himself at the top, slowly phasing out the clones with regular people to serve as his own paramilitary force and effectively hold the galaxy hostage. There's a lot more to it than just that, but that's the simplified version, and the ultimate conclusion it brings us to is this. Some would argue that this is all proof that allowing the existence of a Republic military will inevitably lead to another empire, and that that's how the New Republic Senate would view the situation, including characters like Mos Mothma, Leia, or any other interested parties who would have a stake in the direction of the New World Order. Therefore, it's apparently in character for them to decide they can just do without one, and I disagree strongly. I think Mothma and Leia are smart enough to realize the only reason the Empire was brought down was thanks to a consortium of people banding together to overthrow their oppressors, and that it's obviously not intrinsically a bad thing to employ military force to do that. That's what the rebellion was. The problem with the clones was that they were fully controlled by one man who exercised his own executive authority, granted to him by the Senate, to consolidate all the power for himself and use that to press the galaxy into an era of terrible darkness. And the only reason that was allowed to happen at all was because the Republic didn't already have a military, and were therefore desperate for anyone to save them from Count Dooku. You'd think the lesson there would be the Republic can never allow itself to be in that position again, so they should militarize. They should enlist regular people from various different Republic worlds, and the very concept of a clone army should be made illegal galaxy-wide.
Perhaps Leader Snoke should consider using a clone army.
This line right here is interesting in and of itself because it implies the existence of current cloning facilities the First Order could have used instead of kidnapping children. Surely not Kamino for the reasons we just went over, but possibly some sort of under-the-table, less trustable faction of cloners who might produce an imperfect product, but they'll do so for much cheaper and with better discretion. That could have been interesting, I suppose, though I genuinely don't know which I'd consider to be more believable in terms of how the First Order got their army. And in any case, that's beside the point, and I realize I'm rambling a bit, so let's rein it back in. My ultimate point here is this. I don't think it's within character for any of the heroes in the Rebel Alliance to allow the New Republic to have such meager defenses as they did, and I think the conclusion a lot of the newer Disney stuff has come to about why someone like Mothma would choose to demilitarize is stupid, frankly. It's a childish and simplistic understanding of the situation that I don't believe someone like Mothma would have, nor do I believe that about Leia, Han, or even Luke when it comes right down to it. And I think the only reason it was written like this in The Force Awakens is because JJ just couldn't be bothered to figure out a way to naturally dispose of them to make way for this Empire versus Rebellion rehash, which is a shame. This story had potential to be so much more, but instead it's just the original trilogy redone.
Yeah, this is a Sheev Talks video. Oh, a new SML video is out. Great. Almost 3 hours now. Thanks for watching. This might be the last stream I do because, or before Christmas, at least, that's what I meant. Last stream before Christmas, so Merry Christmas and all that. Happy holidays, you know that song. Lots of Christmas music, yay. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. Alright, good night, or good day, whatever.